You're back at the, yeah, I think it's up.
Okay, she's coming, right? Yeah.
Testing 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Okay.
Yeah. No, in Austin, yeah, that was great. I was instrumental. I was instrumental.
Okay. And then he's gone on to do that.
So, yeah, I was with, sitting about,
We just, you know, like a way back because, we went to music together. So, yeah, so, we've known each other. Hi, I'm Simon. Oh, I didn't say that. Oh, that's yesterday. Okay. No, he and I, actually, he and I are meant to get together and figure out when to get together.
We should have been together.
I think he's back. I don't know when, so we're trying to get together. Oh, so nice to meet you.
Yeah, that's fun.
Very small. Yeah, so Chris is still there, and then Chris Round's still around.
Yeah. I was at the conference, three months ago, I met with, we saw
Well, now he's setting up all of this. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate people. It's really good. I worked with myself comments, but like all the things we did way back when was the before every live, we did the 1 day, we got the big ones.
For the, yeah, we keep changing that.
Just about to say.
Oh, that's
Which color?
We never have a real.
So we have a theme.
So I think we're
And the beauty is. Must have it in the video.
Yeah. Well, I go way back to the
Traffic's pretty bad. That's right.
Yeah, and then Ross left.
Next
So
cover,
that's
which is your final cover, is as you can see, there's an area that stays out.
I think it's like everything. I mean,
And which color do you want?
yeah, I mean,
That's the big color, final color.
For someone who isn't blacked out.
yeah.
The launch thing. The launch. So when did you arrive? Last time.
No, not yet, but I think while you.
You're not the tallest one in the room.
Where are you based?
I think German, in the city.
Right.
That's all.
When are we doing it?
Maybe a cup, there you go.
She can hold this one next to
So I work for something called.
Is this my
Okay. Where is that?
Thank you very much. Someone used that 5 minutes.
Okay. Oh, Ja, irgendwas sogar ausverkauft, ne? Ich hatte irgendwie noch gestern jemanden, die wollte es. Ich habe jetzt hier so irgendwo aufwendig dieser City, aber auch wenn es 5 oder 10 Dollar. Und da mal auch Tag vorher schicken wir
Connector from the rear, I'll turn it on for him.
Ja, wir haben Door-Tickets mittlerweile nochmal vor Ort. Bay Area, high school kids, Ja, mach mal, hier steht noch das war das erste. Ja, also das Gute ist, wir machen drei Veranstaltungen für Eltern. Und dann die letzte Veranstaltung ist das Team-Panel. Also da kriegen wir die Teenagers, die dann selber reden. Und da kommen auch die Kinder dazu. Und daneben Eltern dann noch mehr die Kinder noch. Als das bei den aber das ist gut, da kommen auch Counselors, Teacher. Aber dann haben wir das jetzt auch dasselbe Problem mit den Tickets. So, das ist $5, $10, und dann hast du 250 Tickets verkauft auf dem Netride und dann kommen aber nur 150, weil auch wieder irgendwas ist. Ne? Und dann, wie kriegst du das noch in den Plan? Und da haben wir jetzt eben angefangen, machen wir so eine Waitlist und dann sehen wir halt ungefähr, wo wir sind und dann wissen wir halt ganz genau, wie aggressiv wir dann den Leuten sagen, das wird verkauft. Und dann machen wir auch aber das ist immer so eine Zeit. Ich nehme an, das wird sich nicht weiter nächstes Jahr. Egal, oder was wir das ist ja auch so wahrscheinlich.
All right.
And you're gonna pick up.
Okay. I don't think I need this, but have everyone's attention. I think we'll start up. All right.
I turned the mic back up. Can you hear me? Awesome. All right. Thank you everybody for coming. It's we're starting off a little light. I think it might be traffic. So I heard last week on the news that there is this event going on this week, and I thought, yeah, that's cool. SAP Inside Track, that's awesome. And they followed up to say that you should avoid traffic and there will be chaos. And I thought, no, not really. We're not being that many. And then I realized there's something called Dreamforce that is going on today or this week. So that might have impacted the traffic on the freeway and everything in the city. But anyway, it's great to have you all here. It's cool to be at SuccessFactors. The view is magnificent. It's really awesome. So I want to give a big thank you to SuccessFactors. I don't think Catherine is here, but if she is, we'll talk to her later. Anyway, I think we should give a big applause to SuccessFactors for hosting us, right? We have a great agenda today. It's pretty packed. We're going to have talks from a lot of different people. It's really awesome. We have people flying in from Australia. We have people coming over from Europe. We have people from Canada. We have people from the US. We have local people. We have people from, we're global. And we're also doing it on live stream today. So people will be watching all over. So in that respect, please speak out loudly if you're doing Q&A and questions. Maybe we should use microphones. We'll try to figure that out. But make sure that you are heard. And and other logistical stuff. If you didn't get a Wi-Fi password, let me know. I'll give you one. We have more upstairs. The bathrooms are upstairs, right side of the reception. So this is an open space. People will be walking back and forth. So don't be distracted by people coming in, checking out what we're doing, leaving again. That's absolutely fine. We'll have lunch at around 1 o'clock. Before that, there's a coffee break at around 10:30. And we'll have a great keynote speaker. Hal Arnold will be here at 11. Looking forward to that. So that'll be awesome. We're also having some presentations from our sponsor today, so Neptune Software. We should give a big applause to Neptune Software as well. That's really great. I won't keep you any longer. The first speaker of this day is all white from SAP I/O. So,
Yeah. So thank you for joining us. I'm Paul from SAP, SAP.io. I have Shuki joining as well, who's also part of I/O. And I'll give a little intro on myself and do the same. Before we do that though, just to get a sense of who's in the room, how many folks are SAP employees? Okay, and then what about SAP customers? You, and then SAP partners. Okay, so about split 30. So a little background on myself. I'm 10 years with SAP in a variety of business development and sales roles. I joined I/O in March, and my role with SAP.io is really working with the startups that we invest in to help drive the synergies between the startups and SAP and our customers. And I'll explain a bit more what that means and what that looks like as part of the presentation. But Shuchi, you want to introduce?
Sure. Hi everyone, my name is Shuchi. I'm probably one of the newest members, both SAP and SAP.io. Been a part for about 5 months. And I help run the Foundry in San Francisco. So, background tech startups for over 15 years and here in Silicon Valley from start to a few exits. So very familiar. Yes, it was a good alignment as far as joining the team. So glad to be here.
Great. So who's familiar with SAP.io? Okay, good. So only a couple of people. So what's that? Okay. So the SAP.io is a strategy by SAP to remain a leader in innovation, and our piece of that strategy is focused on startup innovation. And we are approaching startup innovation in 4 ways as part of SAP.io. You can see here, ranging from very internal focused startup innovation to external. So as part of I/O, we have the SAP.io Venture Studio, and that's an organization inside of SAP where we support internal entrepreneurs and internal startup ventures. So we go through a process of recruiting ideas, recruiting folks internally, and then allowing those entrepreneurs to then become their own CEOs and run a business, a startup inside of SAP. And so they are expected to operate that business just as if they were a startup. So they get funding, quote unquote budget. There are some shadow shares kind of set up for that initiative, for that solution. And then the CEO founder is expected to build that solution like they are a startup. They can recruit externally, they can host on AWS, Azure, they can use external graphic designers, whatever. So they are treated very much like a startup. And the intent of having this internal piece as part of the broader strategy of working with startup innovation is to help change our culture internally, and to help drive an innovative culture and continue that culture of innovation internally at SAP. As a component of the internal component, we We also have the 1 Billion Lives, which is a very similar initiative to the Venture Studio, except that it's focused on social impact and solution software that would have broader implications and social impact. The part of the IO organization that Chuchi and I are a part of is over on the left. So the fund and the foundry, where we work strictly with external startups. And again, so if we come back to the broader strategy of why we're working with startups in the first place is to continue to remain a leader in innovation. And we need to, as SAP, be a part of the innovation that's occurring outside of our four walls. And a lot of that cutting edge innovation is happening and being driven by startups. And so that's where the external component becomes relevant, because we can, by partnering and working with these early stage startups, continue to be aware of the innovation that's happening. We can fill gaps in SAP solutions and white space, so where we don't have a solution or a startup is leveraging SAP data to make our solutions more valuable to our customers, and then bringing that value back to our customers. And I'll explain how we do that as part of the fund and the foundry as well. So the two components on the external side are that we have a venture fund. This is a $35 million fund where we invest in early stage startups as a co-investor with other institutional VCs. And so we're investing in seed and Series A startups that complement SAP solutions. And then in addition to the fund, we have the SAP.io boundaries. And that's our kind of branding terminology for a startup accelerator, a startup incubator, where we are bringing in cohorts of startup companies in a foundry location to get mentorship and access to SAP resources in those locations to identify potential areas to collaborate and bring value to SAP and to our customers. So that's the setup. That's kind of the overall strategy purpose, and then how we're driving towards that strategy with these different areas. Again, the SAP folks in the room are probably very familiar with this, among others. This aligns to SAP's overall strategy of delivering the intelligent enterprise to customers. And so this drives how our teams are evaluating startups that we will invest in and the startups that we partner with and bring into our foundries. And so we're looking for startups that extend our applications by leveraging SAP data, and I'll give a couple of examples of those that are improving or modifying our workflows, and then lastly, extending the value of our platforms for our customers as well. A little bit more detail on both the fund and the foundry. So on the fund side, we invest strictly in very early stage, so seed and Series A startups, and as a co-investor. And we also do not put any sort of requirements or restrictions on the startups that we are investing in. So in the past, SAP has had some similar initiatives where we've worked with startups, and we ask them, as part of working with SAP, to host or build on SAP Cloud Platform or SAP HANA or SAP products. With our initiative, we are strictly looking for solutions and technologies that complement SAP. We do not put any sort of requirements or expectations on the startups when we invest. We do that for the main reason being that if we come back to our strategy of wanting to have visibility into the innovation that's occurring at the edge, and also to be able to bring that innovation to our customers, once you start putting requirements and restrictions that they host on SAP and et cetera, then you're excluding, you're excluding innovations, you're excluding startups that may have a substantial value for your customer base. We are a co-investor, so we never lead rounds, but we do co-invest with other major institutional investors. A little more on the foundry side. So we have foundry locations in San Francisco, right up near AT&T Park is where our foundry is located here. We also have one in our New York Hudson Yards office, and then Paris, Berlin, and Tel Aviv as well. Next year, we are in the process of planning a launch for additional foundries in APJ. And these are zero equity accelerators. So we do not take any equity from the startups to participate in these foundries. We evaluate their fit for SAP, and then we bring them into the foundry. We provide mentorship, access, and exposure to SAP technologies, and then also exposure and interactions with our customers as well. We are also launching foundries that are line of business focused and collaborative with lines of business at SAP. So our foundry that will be launched in January in San Francisco that Shuchi will be running is in collaboration with SuccessFactors specifically. So for that foundry, SuccessFactors is helping to evaluate the startups that make sense for us to work with. And then they're going to provide ongoing support and resources and engagement with the startups during the cohort to ensure that SuccessFactors is getting the potential benefit from working with these companies as well. And SuccessFactors is partnered with us because they have a broader open ecosystem strategy and working with companies like startups to bring micro apps and value to their customers. Any questions on kind of the two and how they're set up and why each of them are relevant to SAP? I'll talk a bit more too about how customers work with us because I think that's probably a relevant question.
Do you have an example of any changes that these startups made to SAP, aka what kind of innovation they actually brought to SAP and their solutions?
Yeah, so the question was, do I have any examples of how the startup solutions are bringing incremental value to SAP solutions? I do, so I'll jump down to, I'll respond with some examples from the startups that we have invested in. So this is our current portfolio of startups on the fund side. So these are startups that we have direct investments in, and they range from startups in the supply chain space to HR, to healthcare, and also finance with regards to things like GDPR. So to respond to the question about startups that are bringing incremental value to SAP, a couple of examples are Clear Metal. So Clear Metal is an early stage company. I wouldn't necessarily still qualify them as a startup. They've been around for about 4 years. They've closed enterprise deals with large SAP customers as well as other large enterprises. And what they do is they collect and rationalize international shipping data to be able to provide very accurate and a real-time view of containerized goods in shipment, specific to oceanic freight, which is currently a huge pain point for manufacturers, retailers, anyone that's shipping large amounts of containerized freight. And so their solution is adding direct incremental value to SAP's transportation management solution. So customers that are using TM to track their goods can also include clear metals to be able to provide that accurate real-time data into TM. That's one example. Another example is Big ID, which we invested in about a year ago. They just won Most Innovative Company at the RSA conference, which was a couple of months ago in San Francisco. And they have a machine learning based correlation engine that goes out across an enterprise and scans for personally identifiable information, and then is able to tell the enterprise where they have individuals' information across all of their databases and repositories, so that they can effectively respond to GDPR. And so they are filling a gap in SAP's GDPR solution set, where we have Gigia for consent management, GRC for policies. Big ID brings the ability for a company to go out and find and actually locate that personal information. And then one more on the HR side, Plum is a recent investment that we made about a couple of months ago. They're based in Canada, and they are using artificial intelligence and psychometric analysis. So like a Myers-Briggs sort of analysis, or like a StrengthsFinder kind of analysis, to align the recruiting process with an individual's talents. So the candidates can take the Plum assessment, identify what their talents are, so leadership, innovation, and at the same time, the recruiters and the hiring managers take a similar survey to align on which talents are required for a given role. And so through that process, they can identify candidates that would exceed in that position based on their talents, not just their skills and experience. And so they are, Plum's available via the App Center, and it has a very close collaboration with SuccessFactors. So that's a few examples of the startups that we invest in and how they're complementing SAP. I'll touch on the Foundry side, and then I want to talk about how customers are working with us. I think I went through most of this when I was talking about the Foundry. Let me just highlight, these are Foundry, these are startups that participated in our most recent Foundry in San Francisco. And so it's similar to the funded companies in that they cross supply chain, HR, and finance with Contract Wrangler. Our next Foundry, like I said, will be all HR focused in collaboration with SuccessFactors. But this gives you an idea of the types of companies that we also work with on the Foundry side. So the way that there are really two ways that we are engaging with customers to bring this startup innovation to the customer and help them address challenges and use cases that they have. One is having customers actually visit the Foundry. And so SAP hosts innovation days for our customers, where a number of our customers will come to Palo Alto or to New York Hudson Yards or to another SAP office and hear from SAP executives and partners. We host a similar type session at our Foundry locations, where a customer comes in, they want to hear why SAP IO exists, why we're investing in startups, and then they also want to understand if any of the startups could meet some of the challenges that they're having. So we'll have the customers visit our space. It's a very unique space compared to other SAP locations. It's very co-working like. So when a cohort is in session, we have 10 startups in a space about 2/3 the size of this. And so a lot of energy. Customers come in, they leave inspired. We provide them with a brief overview on what we're doing, but then we also select a handful of the startups to present to the customer in areas that are of interest to the customer. So if it's for example, we had American Airlines come through and their SuccessFactors team. So we had 3 of our HR-related startups present to American Airlines, for example. And they'll do a quick pitch on their product solution, have time to network and discuss if there are any opportunities for further discussions and pilots. And so a number of these customers, one, they feel inspired, one, to understand that SAP has a strategy to remain relevant, right? To continue to be a leader in innovation. And they feel inspired to see that we're collaborating and investing in these startups in a way and working to bring that innovation to our customers. And in a number of cases have left and started pilots with a number of the startups themselves. The other way that we work with customers is very focused and tactical, and really working with their account teams and the customer directly to understand what specific needs they have, what specific challenges they have, and if there's a startup that we're working with that has a solution in an area that can meet those challenges. So one example of that is with the startup's not listed up here, but it's called Area 17. It was on the list of funded startups. They have a platform, or building a platform to effectively control robots autonomously in indoor environments like a warehouse. And so the use case right now is that's kind of easiest to comprehend is like a drone being able to autonomously fly through a warehouse and do inventory cycle counting. And so Home Depot, our account team, through a design thinking session with the Home Depot team, identified some challenges and need around this in their store locations. And we were able to bring this startup in collaboration with the SAP account team to Home Depot and present a solution where we can have drones in the off hours flying through a Home Depot store and doing inventory cycle counting of what's in the racks above the floor, again, in the off hours. And so that's a pilot that's being launched next quarter with Area 17 and Home Depot in collaboration with our account team. And so that was again, identifying a specific challenge and seeing if there's a startup that we're working with that can meet and address that challenge. A couple of other interesting ways that we've worked with the startups is SAP as a customer of the startups. So we have 2, one being Cultivate. So Cultivate's one of the foundry startups that scans your communication, a manager's communications with their team, and uses AI to provide recommendations on how they can be a better manager. So it's AI for manager coaching, and we're launching a pilot with Cultivate internally at SAP, sponsored by Jen Morgan, that's being launched actually next week. And another one being Plum, which is the HR startup with the AI and psychometric analysis, is another situation where we are launching a pilot internally at SAP with Plum in Q4. So it's also bringing value to our customers in these areas, and SAP is also seeing areas where we can pilot technologies to for us to become more effective as well. So, any questions? That's what I had for the overview for today. Any questions on our strategy, how we're executing, how to come for a visit, engage more. Yeah.
You say you were starting in APJ?
Yeah. Yeah, so we, the question was, I had mentioned that we are launching Foundries in APJ. So we've recruited a regional leader that's based in Singapore, and we are evaluating locations for Foundry in APJ in 2019. We haven't finalized on the location yet, but the plan is to have at least 1 or 2 Foundries operating in APJ in 2019 as well. Great. So Simon has my contact information if there's any interest in coming by for a visit, meeting any of the startups that you had seen. And are you sharing the presentations?
We will, yeah.
Yeah, so you can refer to the startups we have listed and see if there's any interest there. Thanks.
Big hand. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was great. Next up, we have Rui. Are you ready for your presentation? Thank you. Awesome.
Just go ahead. Or we wait until 10:10?
No, you can.
I'm sure.
Then I'll send you the presentation.
Yeah.
Great. We'll if there's any questions, follow-ups. There's some here.
Oh,
So we'll have a 5-minute break because we need to get the kind of.
Or somebody has an adapter for the new Mac and the HDMI?
I've got the new one, but I've never used it before.
Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah. Otherwise, forget it. There's always the rest.
Oh, there it is. Perfect. Thank you very much. That works. Thanks. That looks good. Okay, so we'll wait a few minutes until everybody comes back.
Okay.
Are you streaming live?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyone live there?
Yeah.
Can we see who's there? Vitaly.
Yeah, Vitaly is there.
My ex.
I'm not sure
Buddy.
if he's also working with some HANA stuff, so I'm not sure if.
So we have Simon Cam. We have, who else do I know? No, all the others, hi. So we will start
In a
few minutes. People will just go upstairs for a bio break.
So can you hear us okay? Sound okay?
Oh, Jenny!
Yeah, hey, Jenny.
A bit. We'll start soon, okay? Are they also seeing the slides?
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. What's the? What are they looking for?
Oh, thank you, Jenny. And while you are waiting for the others to come, I want to give you a little show. Well, together with Mark, come on, we do a juggling show. Okay? 1, 2, 3. Ta-da!
Oh, that's
You missed the juggling piece.
Oh, come on, again.
Sorry. There is only sometimes this one change.
What you told me? I don't get a juggling show?
Okay, you're right.
Okay.
Okay. That's for you. Nobody else is supposed to know. But you get in the front. Ooh.
Oh, okay.
No, I can't. I cannot. Okay.
18,000 people are seeing nothing. Go in front of the camera.
Okay. They're not seeing now.
You gotta get in front of the camera.
Ah, okay. Okay, we do that. Okay, come. Like this. Okay. I will not be able to read it. I tell you. I will mess it up.
Oh, it's.
I told you. Okay, we'll try again. Okay.
Practice some more.
That was on purpose.
Okay, last try. Okay. Okay, it was the last try. Okay, meanwhile we have everybody in the room. Okay, so after this juggling show, let's get to something less interesting. Are you guys okay? Shall I start?
Yay.
A few minutes more? What about the gang on the left-hand side? Sorry. You want to join here?
Yeah, we need.
Huh? Okay. So, thanks for joining. I will be talking today about the application programming model on SAP Cloud Platform. I know the name is very long, but that's supposed to be. Who of you already has heard about this application programming model? Quick check. Who has not seen it so far? Who was typing and is not able to? Okay. So just briefly about me. So that's my life on the slide. Family with one boy, one girl, a house, a garden, nothing to do electronics with Raspberry Pi. I'm a Trekkie, Portuguese and German. My first computer on the left-hand side. I love Apple stuff, or I used to even love it more, but we'll talk about it later somewhere. And all around stuff that I did around programming. So that's all my life. I know it's sad, but yeah, all on one slide, so that you know who I am. Let's go through this demo first. No, we don't. So I'm sharing here with you everything that I know. So of course it might be completely wrong too. But to give you some background around the cloud platform first. Who of you has heard about the SAP Cloud Platform? Okay, who of you has not heard about the cloud platform? So we don't care. So a platform as a service offering to let customers, developers build, run, and deploy applications, but maybe first you build, then you deploy, then you run it and operate applications in the cloud. Providing you lots of services on the platform meanwhile, so the number of services has increased quite drastically. Meanwhile, we are also adding additional business service on the cloud platform and what you see there on the left-hand side. So you are all aware of the multi-cloud strategy from SAP. So the cloud platform runs on not only on SAP data centers, but also on AWS, on Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform. And we are using various, how we call them, environments, right, to let you either use the SAP proprietary environment called Neo. That was the first one we had. We've added Cloud Foundry, the standard to standard for PaaS offerings. We are adding also Kubernetes to environments as well as ABAP. Maybe I should also remove number 2 there, because meanwhile they are all GA. And what you see on the left-hand side is the master data objects. Is something that we need also for the intelligent enterprise, right? With the idea to have on the cloud platform a central place where you store assets like a business partner, like an employee, right? And storing that centrally in the cloud platform, and then having the SAP Cloud Solutions accessing that centrally, with the idea that all the SAP Cloud Solutions will actually work as one suite. So that's something we are building up now with the Intelligent Enterprise. And for those of you who have watched the Sapphire Now keynote, also the master data objects were very prominently announced there also at the keynote as one of the building blocks for the Intelligent Enterprise. That's also why you see all the SAP LOB solutions from SuccessFactors, from Ibris, Concur, Ariba, Fieldglass there, because the idea is that the cloud platform is then the orchestration layer, which helps you to orchestrate these various objects around with the cloud platform and then distribute it to the LOB solutions. And for the to support this whole story, what we have done in the SAP internal project last year that I was involved in is to think, okay, how can we help now developers to really create applications more efficiently than they were able to do it before, right? So that's when the application programming model came into play. It's actually a framework to create applications from the persistency layer, right, up to the domain logic and the UI, right? So what are now the building blocks of the application programming model? So the most important thing is that it is built around the core data services. So those of you coming from the ABAP world or the HANA world are aware of CDS. I've already had also a chat with Mike today morning, right? Talking about the RESTful application programming model from the ABAP side of the house, using the same principles. So that's what you do with the application programming model, looking into CDS, and inside CDS, leveraging and creating the service SDKs, right? So connecting to specific applications like S4HANA, right, via the S4HANA SDK. And with that, also leveraging that to embed S4 objects in the whole programming model. And then with that, also be able to consume services on the cloud platform. Then this is supported via development inside the SAP Web IDE in the cloud platform. Or you can also develop applications locally with the tools that you like and use. And it's supporting on the UI side Fiori, of course, as a standard, but the whole model is really open not only to SAP proprietary technology, but also open to any other technology, being it on the UI side, on the service side, as well as on the persistent side. And you can see it also here on the persistent side. We support, of course, out of the box HANA, but you can also connect any other database. But we started first with HANA, but the whole model lets you extend that to other databases too. And yeah, using S4HANA extensions and connecting via the Cloud SDK to S4HANA systems and also other systems. So at the end, if you look into the programming model, it's really a synergy of SAP proprietary technology and open source, and leading this really in a way that gives you a lot of freedom to create these applications simply by modeling it in CDS, but also at the same time leaving you the freedom to add also additional custom coding to these applications. And I will not just do a slideshow, I will also show you a demo, and we can look into the demo and maybe explain a little bit more on the demo. So finally, right, it's a consistent way to create end-to-end an application from the consistency level up to the UI. So, and I will stop here, and we will be moving over now to a demo that I have prepared, and is actually part of a TechEd hands-on session I will be holding at Las Vegas. Let me just show it to you here. Can you read this? Okay, because if you could, you don't need any glasses. Let me just increase the size to something better readable. That's better? Okay. We have lots of space in here, so you can sit here to see better. Can you see it? No? Come here up. Okay, so what we have here is now the web IDE of the cloud platform. So we have a special version for full stack development. Who of you knows the web IDE on the cloud platform? Can you raise your hands, at least those paying attention? Okay. Who of you didn't know the web IDE? Again. Okay. So it's a central place on the cloud platform where you can develop applications in this IDE. And the first thing that I will do in this workspace, I will clone a Git repository. So I have prepared an application on GitHub, which is also public right now, because we will also use it during our hands-on session. And this application is an application for a space travel agency. So in case you are in the travel industry space, you can use that to think about how to run your own travel agency for planets around our world, our solar system. So this application, that's a travel agent, book a flight to all kinds of different planets. And we will simply clone this repository, because that's where now the whole code is inside for the application. Let's use it, and we will go to the web IDE. This here. Clone the repository and bring it over, right? So we will do it now live. Takes a while. I could actually start juggling again, but I don't think we will take that long of time. Okay, maybe I should start juggling. Can you give me the 3 balls?
It's done. It's done.
Oh, it's ready. Okay, too late.
Don't give me the balls anyway.
So let's look now into the structure. You see we have 3 main folders. So one about the database on the very low level, right? So to define the consistency, one level above the service layer, and then the application with the UI. So the exercise is actually the description of the exercises for the hands-on session. You can ignore that. And the sheet folder is actually for the web IDE, containing some information around this project for the web IDE. Okay, so let's look now into the database folder. And what you can see that this folder, or this definition of the whole data model is here quite narrow, right? It says that we have a flight model and a space model. So let's look into the flight model first. So it's a reference, right, to the flight model, which is defined here. And the flight model now has all the entities defined, right? Like the airport. It already includes notations on the right-hand side, right, where this at title, for example, is. That's information that will later on be used in the UI. So meaning in the CDS file, we can already add notations for your user interface, and also define associations to other entities, right? To other entities belonging to the same model, right? And we have it here for the airports. We have it here for the airlines, right? So that's our data model. We also have one here with the bookings, where again you have, for example, an association to the itineraries, which are defined above. So doing it here in a very easy way. And those of you who know CDS, by the way, who of you knows CDS? Yeah. So that should be very common to you, right? If you see this, right? So and what happens now if I now build? Let's do a build here on the database side. Let's start that. So what now the web IDE will do? I have prepared a HANA system beforehand where we can deploy this. The application programming model will now take these CDS files and translate it into, in this case, assets for the HANA, right? And you can see also here in the log, while this is being done, that once the log starts showing up more information, that the CDS files are now translated into HTTP CDS files for the HANA database, right? And once this is done, we can have a look into this into an HDI container that is created, and we can see all the schemas that have been created, and also at the same time also some data that you can also add. You see here we have some CSV files that have some pre-defined data that will be automatically pushed to the HANA schemas, right? For the aircraft codes, we have also some bookings already defined here, so that our database starts with a good set of resources or of data already. So it's now we will see now some more information. There it is. The container is being created, and now you're seeing that it was fast. Scroll up a little bit. So the database has been built. If we look now into this, there they are, right? So you see that these corresponding HANA assets are being created, and we can now also look into the HDI container. It will now connect to the HANA database, which will the HDI container cannot be opened. It's not true. Let's see. Also, I can see it here. Oh no, it is true. Okay, what a pity. Let's try one. Let's remove it. Let's try one. Remove the database. We'll take this name because I know it's there. Oh, it is there. Just wants to create it. Oh, that's very, very small. Can you read it? Let's see if that works. No, it didn't work. So if this would work, you could actually see it, but I don't know why it doesn't now. And you see it's totally live, because otherwise I would be making a fool of myself right now. Never, yeah. Okay, last try. Something happens, but not what I expected. Okay, let's leave out the HDI container. I have to look into that, why it doesn't show up here. But according to the log, the database has been published now, and the next step is now to run the whole service. So and what it does is build, again, based on the CDS files, and you see here also additional CDS files for the service, actually looking into the entities we have defined before in the database and merging and meshing them up together to one or to a set of OData services, right? So that's what you do here with these CDS files on the service level. And out of that, a Java application is created, prepared for you, which actually takes all of that and creates an OData service that we can use, right? So that takes a bit, the Java application, and now doing all the plumbing in the back that you don't have to take care of right now, right? So the database is already there, right? And now it's connecting, it's creating code which connects to the HANA database, which exposes now the data in a way that you define in the CDS files for the corresponding model here. And once you do that, right, we will be able to use that Java application and browse through our OData service. So let's see how long it takes. Now I could start Java, but Mark is concentrated.
I only have one.
You only have one?
Yeah.
I've got a question.
Yes.
So maybe I should ask that. Does it use low data provisioning? Because I've used low data provisioning service before, which allows you don't need a gateway system to publish your own data service. But there seems to be not much commitment from SAP to that product. For example, they're not recommending that customers use it with S/4HANA. So how are you publishing your own data services here?
So the OData service that you are creating here is is running only there. So it's also the right word, self-contained in the application, right? So what you can do in the CDS files are also referencing other OData services which are out there, and then this will all be meshed up into an OData service which is running inside that Java application, right? So meanwhile, thanks for your question, because it helped to bridge some time to make this run. So let's make this a little bit bigger. So what it shows you now are the OData endpoints, and we see we have the booking service and the flight service. Let's see in our code if this is really what we told them. So it's a booking service, and the flight service is over here. Right, so we define them. And now we can actually navigate into the booking service. Here, let's look into, for example, bookings. Now my browser might be showing stuff not in a good way. Let me just see. Otherwise, we just Chrome. Yeah, let me just take the same URL and show it in Chrome with it to you. So this is now the data, right? So we see here that these are the entries of the bookings, right? We can see here a booking with the itinerary number 12, with the itinerary number 10, and with the itinerary number 3, which is actually, if we go to our code again, which we defined here in this database folder under source. Let's look into bookings, how much we have there. Here they are, 1, 2, 3 bookings, right, with the corresponding IDs, 12, 3, and 10, and that's actually what you also see here, right? So 12, 10, and 3. So the OData service is there, and you can also use that OData service from that moment on and maybe connecting it to other UIs that you want to have. If you want to have also the UI on top, with corresponding Fiori annotations that you also again can now reuse. Let's just click here on the start file. It will this app folder is now containing all the information for the UI. It will take the annotations that we have created in the CDS files and provide you with a standard Fiori UI. So it doesn't look very fancy because we didn't do any custom coding there. It will take the annotations from the OData service and translate it into a Fiori app. So we have here a tile for the applications. And now we'll show you the bookings, the UI for the bookings, and also show you the corresponding data inside. Let's also make this bigger here. So here it's empty. We just fetch the data, clicking on go. Here they are, our 3 bookings. And what you have here is now a complete CRUD application, right? So meaning that we can add here also an additional entry. We say this is trip number 1. Customer is, let's make up a name, I don't know, Moya Watson. And Moya will fly on October 6th with a very nice price of $999,000 with 4 passengers. 2, let's see. Moya, you will be flying to the moon. Where's Moya? Yeah. So we just created another entry in our persistence, and if we take now back again our OData service for the bookings, let's refresh it. We hopefully should see another one. There is Moya. So another entry with the data I just entered, right? So we created a complete CRUD application with the application program. What you can do in addition, and I'm not sure if I will have time to show you, or if we should rather go to questions. We can also now take other services, like a business partner service, and integrate that into this application. So instead of having all the customer data in here, we could say, okay, the central storage of our customers is somewhere in this S4 system, and consuming that service, mashing it up into one, right? And then every time we would go over here to enter the customer, we would fetch the data from the S4 system, display it here, and then store the reference to the S4 system in our application instead of persisting all the data in that application, right? So that's something we could do. That's something also I will show in the hands-on session at TechEd. I personally like the application programming model very, very much because it really combines all the cool stuff from the open source world with enterprise grade qualities. So with we try to create here applications which are solid, which whenever there is an issue, for example, with an open source component, we fix that centrally in the application programming model, and the developer really can concentrate on getting their stuff done instead of doing all the plumbing, right? So to create a connection to the HANA database, to define the data model, and so on. Of course, you could say, well, I can do it with Spring too, right? And I would say, if you're a good developer, you can maybe do it as fast, because I mean, what I'm showing you here now has, of course, some code that we have prepared, right? So defining the data model, and that's something you would have also done with Spring, right? To define your data model. But the real power comes in if you want to make a first change in your code, right? You show it to your boss, and the first thing she or he tells you is, I really like that, but you know, we need to have that 1 additional field here and 3 additional fields there, and then you start juggling around with all the changes that you need to do. Whereas with the application programming model, you do that centrally in the CDS files, and that will actually help you to have less efforts to rework your application, right? And it leaves you the freedom. Maybe that's something I can show. It gives you the freedom then to also add your own custom code, right? So let's look into the service, into the sources of the Java application. You see here a bookings handler, which is empty, right? Meaning that you could actually add here additional coding that is executed whenever you do a booking, right? And that's part of the other exercises I have in the hands-on session, looking into or creating additional code which lets you fetch information from another system or from another service you have implemented in a data model to fetch data, right? So, for example, whenever you click on the here on this customer field that you have instead of a plain field here, that you have a drop-down list, and if you click on that, you send a query to the distance or data service from the S4 system, fetch your data, and then display it here in the UI, right? So that's all coding that you can do then also with it. With that said, I would be open for questions from you. Any questions? Please go ahead.
I saw Kubernetes fairly new.
So your question was, what about Kubernetes? So I showed it in the slide before. It doesn't have anything to do so far with the application programming model. So Kubernetes is used to create containers and run them in the cloud platform. We will be using that in other technologies, and I don't want to steal anybody's show. So watch the Attack Ad keynote. Maybe you will see some cool stuff there. I would be surprised if you don't. But of course, I mean, this is something that at least for the developer of such an application is not the main concern, right? So the question where to deploy this is something which comes afterwards, right? You say, okay, here I can deploy this application in the Cloud Foundry environment, but you could also do it in a Kubernetes container, right? It's just a matter of what you put inside that container and why you would need it, right? If you say, okay, I'm doing space travels, so I have billions of people who would be interested, of course, right? Then you would put it in a container, and SAP would actually help you scaling these containers with Kubernetes in a better way. But for the developer, firstly, it's the main concern is making the developer more efficient and effective with what he wants to do or wants to accomplish, and really focusing on the application itself and the business logic instead of doing all the plumbing inside and having this code to connect to the database, this code to create the persistence, right, and so on. But rather say, okay, this is my data model, right? I say later on, my field X has the title Z, right, showing up in the UI. That's what you do, and the programming model takes away some of the burden that you have with all these plumbing stuff, right, that you are used to as developer, but which you don't actually have to do. It will do it for you.
So for us, just that we have Kubernetes running on one of our applications. So we're running now on DCP. So I was just wondering if it would be easier in the future for us to just redo that Docker image with Kubernetes and going to SAP Cloud Platform. So
once it's available, yes.
cool, thank you.
So any other question? Yeah. Sorry. Oh, wait a second. The microphone.
You mentioned that the OData service is self-contained, but is it not possible to expose it out via the API portal?
Sorry, you want to expose the
OData service via the API portal?
The API, you mean the API Business Hub? Or what is
the API portal offering on the SAP Cloud Platform?
The API portal. I'm not sure what the API portal is.
I
mean, what I know, and maybe you tell me if that's what you mean. API.sap.com, is that what you mean?
Yeah, the API management.
Okay, so the API Business Hub. The API Business Hub is, it's all not related now to the application programming model, but in any case, so the API Business Hub is a place where you have access to the API definitions of SAP solutions, right? So meaning that what you have here are solutions which are fixed. We have a fixed API, right? And if you want, yes, you could do that manually, right? So to provide the API Business Hub with a Swagger file, but then it would be one of the products that need to be listed up here, right? You will not see here the space travel app that we have built. because so far this is not supported in the API Business Hub. What you will get here is, for example, indeed the definition of the whole data business service. It's very small. You combine this. This is nice. The whole data service for business partner, and here you see the respective API definitions in case you want to consume it, right? So if you want to do so, you can download the specification as an EDMX file. So let me show that for you. So and if you do that, right, to consume, so we will have to switch here the Git branch to, so I can show you. So I'm switching now the branch for the code to one that I've created to show how the business partner service can be integrated, so that you see the impact of that change. So what happens if you want to access then an external service is that you have the definitions in here, right? So what you can do in the web IDE is adding to your service. You can add to your service here. New, where is it? Data model from an external service. Oh, I need to make it smaller. So you go here, for example, to the API Business Hub. You type in here, that's the OData service for business partner, meaning that the web IDE knows where the Business Hub is. It fetches now all the APIs which are there. You click here on the business partner. Here, now the logon pops up so that the API Business Hub knows who we are. Let's do that. I log into the API Business Hub. Et voila, you see there? So service for business partner is now selected. I can click on next. And now you see here it detects, hey, you already have this artifact, right? Should I simply override it or not? Actually, I don't do it now. Or I can do it, but it will actually take the same file and put it over here. And with that, you can indeed leverage now any service which is on the API Business Hub from the web IDE. It will fetch for you the API specification, will store it, and then you can do the plumbing inside your code to connect to that service.
So for the demo that you displayed, the only piece of code that you wrote was in the CDS file, or is there anything else? So
for the first part, where the database is developed and the service and the UI, it's only there is also templates available, right? So the same way that I have here a wizard to create to import such an external service, there is also a wizard available which helps you to create that skeleton, right? With pre-filled code. So you can go here, say I want to have a new project from a template, and then there is one called Cloud Platform Business Application. It will create a template for you, right? And indeed, the most important code is the one with the CDS files. And there, I mean, you need to spend some time, of course, to provide all the metadata you need, right? Look, say it's a string, right? 50 fields long. It has a special notation for the UI, where it should show up as title, the booking, right? Or name. So this is all the information, but in essence, yes, the most important part is the CDS file. Once you want to have additional custom code, of course, then you need to jump into the predefined code or the created code for you in the Java application, and then fill that code in there. But if you want to have a simple application, simple CRUD application, there is not much more that you need to do.
Thank you.
How much time do we have?
No more questions?
No more
I
questions?
think we're done. So we'll have about a 15-minute break until we have our next speaker. So feel free to have some coffee. There's some snacks behind here. For those of you newcomers, bathrooms upstairs, right side of the reception. Enjoy. Thank you so much, Trevor.
Yeah, thanks. And don't forget to join my in case you are there. Sorry?
Probably already sold.
I'm pretty sure it is.
I don't know, I do. Your hands on that.
I don't know. Can I see them?
Yes, you log on to the agenda builder.
Bridge there. I need to go to.
I'm really glad. Because even if it's tough, do this stuff, and I figured out, but I'm hoping it's the different. It's awesome. It's just yeah, it's like, you know, that's our, no, that one I know. That's the one. There's a lot of
Yeah.
And you got data stuff too. But it's called inside, like inside classes. What's that? Oh, okay. Because I heard from Georgia, different people on my professional studies side, you search for.
Yeah. Well.
But what's up? Well, and it's funny. Hi, Ariana. Yeah, nice to meet you too. So Helen is at the is for the. Oh, really? Okay.
Great.
You're going to tech. That's it. Great. It's my point is that. Yeah, yeah. But anyway, the point is, so now it's like building out those.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, we're gonna get started.
Have USB-C.
I have no idea. Let's go check it out. What's up there?
Yeah, versus the hybrid. That's marketing.
I'll go away, then you need about two. I'll take you.
Oh, since you're running, yeah, okay. I think so.
Oh, yeah, we're out of the, we were set by.
Careful, I stay now.
I was running the SAP Venture Edition, and he was SAP Venture for a long time, so I had absolutely.
How would I get this by 2006?
How are you?
That's right. It's
an emergency kit.
Emergency meal.
Instead of sand.
Emergency meal. That is. How are you?
Yes.
I would. Taiwan. Yes. Yeah.
In this session, we're going to update
Yeah, I saw it announced. Is that last year? Yeah.
Yeah, last year, and we are working with it.
Wow. The worst.
I hope we can get 40.
It's okay.
Next time, if you have 6.
Hey, but last year we were 70%.
What happened? Popular opinion. There's a lot of style. People are
That's all right.
But you know what? I'm happy about it. I'm glad I wore a blue shirt. That's why before sometimes it's not exciting. I thought only way yes, we see it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I've been here. More opportunities to become help influence where people are going with SAP. So it's really great. And that's what we're live streaming today. Experience we have is it's pretty good. Normally we have to.
Yeah, we go way back. 24 hours.
Yeah. 30 minutes. Stacked out. It's so nice. Yeah, quite all right. I trimmed down a little bit. Hopefully I'll be able to. The final section was actually was down. Is the audience? Right now, we're having multiple people.
Okay.
Okay, are you ready? Okay. Is it still good or can we?
Yeah, perfect. Let's get going.
Ready.
All right, everybody, we're super proud to have Arnold here today from SAP Data Network. And yeah, that's about the introduction I'll do. So give her a big hand. Thank you.
First of all, a super warm welcome. I don't know why I have so many chairs here and everyone is hiding in the back. I really invite you to come here because the next 30 minutes is not a typical presentation. It's more like I want to invite you on a conversation to have about innovation, about our future, how we're going to shape our future together. Because that is a broad context, right? And to keep on
Shape our future together.
shaping the future together. Yes.
But I need to leave today at 6 p.m.
That's fine.
That's fine. Okay.
Your mindset needs to be in that future shaping.
Okay, I'm a Trekkie, I'm used to it.
Okay, great. So, and you know what? I got this
That's a good
stress
idea.
ball as a gift. Thank you so much. I said I want to have a happiness ball, not a stress ball, because I'm not stressed out at all. And he was like saying to me, you know what? It's a survival kit. You know what's inside? Rice. So I can survive in terms of if I'm really hungry, I just kind of get this rice, and then I have rice. So great. Do you know what the topic is today for the next 30 minutes? No clue, right? The only clue you have in the middle, that girl, she's wearing the right t-shirt. What's on her t-shirt?
Love.
Love.
What does it mean? Love
And passion.
Oh, okay.
But you cannot see it. So the next 30 minutes is what we do with you. It's, of course, to get you warmed up, excited for TechEd. It's about the new stuff. There you go. I know you. Okay. Hi. So it's about with the new stuff, innovation. You heard this morning about SAP.io, right? Yeah. So here, Henning, come on, come up, stand up. Henning is the living example of SAP.io, successful, entrepreneurial, and very passionate and learning about what exactly?
I'm very passionate about geospatial data and how geospatial data can improve platforms.
Ooh.
Yeah.
No one
Is
knows.
that what you dream of every?
Suddenly, why?
I love geospatial. So that's kind of my story.
So at the end of the 30 minutes, you understand what Henning really does in all details and how you can repeat the success of having an Atlas and all the SAP.io endeavors. And it's not about, it's really about passion, about the love, and about doing the right things in life, shape the future. So I have the privilege to work on the data part ever since 2.5 years, and this was the starting point. I'm with SAP already 22 years. Wow. In very, very important roles sometimes not, sometimes more. But was always about innovation. And in 2016, we were saying, what are the next big things for SAP to come, where we need to invest? And as you can imagine, in 2016, the topic data was not at the forefront of everything. Because it was more about, if we leverage the data, what does this mean from a risk point of view, reputational risk, and so many things that we should be aware of. And then we did a very bold decision. We're saying, and at the time, Steve Thing, as an entrepreneur, as a founder, co-founder of Concur, he was like, hey, you know what? I believe in that data topic. So let's try it out, but make that as a journey, as an internal startup within SAP. That was the starting point. Executive board decision, SAP Data Network was born. So now, 2 years later, this is where we are. We have a global business. I don't know if you ever heard about the SAP Data Network. Last week, right? Or 2 weeks ago. Hey, come on. No one. No. Okay, that's fine. It's excellent that we are here, or I am here, because after 30 minutes, you're going to know everything what we do. So it's a global business. It's really the core, the value proposition for our customers is we come in and we make the customer successful when the customer would love to tap into the potential of data and on the data monetization. So new revenue models based on data. It has to do a lot about transformation, being the partner with the customer in the innovation journey. And we have 3 products on the price list. We have sales and pre-sales people here, all innovative, that we now go and have something at our hand end to end to say, okay, customer, if you would love to go and monetize your data, this is how we can support it, helpful, and be an end-to-end play. What else?
Yeah, it's a lot about thought leadership because data monetization is starting now to get more and more into the conversations at the board level about new revenue models, about new business models. And the nice thing about investing 2 years, and now after 2 years, understanding where the market goes and the customer, what is the need of the customers, we are now at the right time with the right value proposition, with the right technology enablement, with the right delivery context in terms of methodology to come in and to commit to a business outcome. It's just perfect timing. 2 years ago, we took that decision, we invested heavily, and now we kind of build on our hard work. The journey has been a very emotional journey, and that is what relates to each individual entrepreneurial endeavor and startup. So you start with this idea at the beginning. This was for me in 2016. You just see the picture. Then the next one is, hey, what idea solves this problem? What are you coming in? What's the business problem to solve? What is the strategy that you bring to the market? I can tell you the first strategy will be changed at least 7 times. Because you learn with your customers, you learn what the market wants and what is the sweet spot for SAP. What is the right to win for SAP? And the right to win for SAP, I'll just jump in, please. We only have 30 minutes. What is our key differentiator when it comes to data and data monetization? What do you think? What only SAP has, the key differentiator to why SAP and not Salesforce? We have a technology part. Who is familiar with SAP Data Hub, with the management suite? Cool. So we have the technology that is really ready. A year ago at TechEd, it has been announced, the Data Hub. So 1 year later now, you're going to see there are a lot of more features and functionalities available. The team did a fantastic job. Awesome, really awesome in terms of openness and integration, building on what is already available in the SAP ecosystem and leveraging that. The middle piece is something that we are very, very capable to do. Delivering pre-configured business content. We understand the industry. We understand business processes that are running currently in S4, in C4. So the business context that we bring to the table, this is what we do right now. We invest into what is needed, for instance, for a retailer in the data space. And there is Henning, and I would wish really that Henning, maybe right at the moment, you come and do the demo, what the difference is when they engage with Atlas and what a retailer gets. And you may be a little bit surprised because it's cool, it's innovative, it's progressive, and it is SAP.io. So maybe let's go in and see what a retailer can benefit from when engaging with Atlas as part of the entire value chain of the data-driven innovation. Yeah? Absolutely. And we only have 30 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I raise a question? So is it an offering we provide, or SAP provides to customers?
Yes.
So it's how is it related? Oh, sorry.
Just roll.
Yeah. So my question was if this is an offering for customers to innovate in a broader sense. How is it connected to the design thinking approach? It goes hand in hand, or is it a different principle?
Very good question. It goes. When we come and engage with customers, the very first thing is an ideation workshop. But it's not. It's based on design thinking principles, but very focused on the data innovation part. Why I'm saying this is because we commit to a business outcome within 3 months. So the customer is, that seeing is believing principle. We want to engage with the customer. The customer is inspired by a specific business scenario that we identified during the design thinking workshop. And we say within 3 months, we deliver you a POC. But the POC is not a kind of a fake POC. We already work our way back to what are the data sources that we need. how we're gonna make sure that in this business context, we deliver on this business scenario. And that business scenario normally has a loop back into a business context, business process. It's not standalone. I'm not in the inside business, right? Like the reporting. Of course, data is the basis for reporting as well, but we are in the business of new business models, of changing certain business processes in a way that machine learning, they are running more intelligent, better, you take different decisions. So that one is done within 3 months. That's why the methodology we are using is calling 3-4-3. 3 days you engage with the customer, ideation, design thinking, very focused on the data. Then 4 months in order to do the POC, and then preparing all the system and the connectivity using Data Hub as the core foundation to do so, creating the data pipelines. And the next step is then production. And we just switch it over to production.
And you were mentioning now in that regard, SAP IO, how is that now related?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is
So,
good segue.
SAP IO has 2 sides to it, just to preface that. We have an external seed fund and accelerator, where we invest into startups that are leveraging the SAP ecosystem. And then we have what's called the SAP Venture Studio, which you can think of as an internal startup incubator. So I'm part of the Venture Studio, and we have about, I think, 5 incubations right now. All of those incubations are SAP internal, so everyone's an SAP employee. And our challenge is to create new products and new businesses within SAP, so that we don't, 5 years down the line, have to go and acquire a company because we missed the trend early on. And as part of that, we have a lot more freedom when it comes to product standards and processes, because we are really in a mode where we operate like a startup in terms of getting a product out early to the customer, getting feedback, maybe starting down market instead of large enterprises straight away.
Yeah. So, so if I understood you well, then what you the way how SAP IO is connected is as kind of an executor on these ideas to have some fast results.
So in our particular instance, we work together because we are focused on bringing third-party location-based data into the enterprise. And that is pretty much a well-aligned story with the data network. So we become a content provider for the data network, and we help solve these end-to-end business processes that the data network is solving.
And maybe this is a really great question, because the topic data and data innovation cannot be solved with SAP alone. That is a partner play. So you have a lot of partners that you bring into the ecosystem, understanding what needs to get in place in order to deliver towards a data innovation project. And this Henning is a partner in soul and in client, because the speed matters, understanding the customer engagement and understanding that the value that he brings to the table is really a very big one in specific customer cases, specifically in the retail industry. So maybe let's quickly go to the demo.
Absolutely.
Is it connected?
It is connected. It's just showing a black screen. Should I contextualize the Data Hub a little bit or not?
Well, let's go first with your value proposition, and we go on the Data Hub.
All right.
Directly.
Okay. So then let me see. So our vision or mission is that we enable customers to systematically leverage third-party location data to drive business outcomes. So imagine you're a retailer and you want to launch a new product. Then right now, what usually happens is that you look at historical sales data, so internal data, first-party data that you have in your systems. You find out what's a similar product, where has it sold well, all right, that's probably where I'm gonna launch my new product. What we enable you to do is systematically leverage data on who's visiting the stores that you want to sell your product. So if you're a retailer, who's visiting the different stores in the different areas that you're located in? What are the demographic attributes in terms of age, gender, income of those visitors, and also the surrounding area? So that's all data that we have curated in one central repository, and we make available to the business users so they can tap into it and optimize their assortment plan and optimize their new product launch. So just to quickly show you a demo on how that might work. So let's say you're a known retailer out of out of the Midwest. And we have data for pretty much all of your locations. And the interesting part is we don't stop at just ingesting census data, for example. We always are on the look for more real-time data sets, like data from mobile devices that we can incorporate and deliver extra insights. So the mobile device data is being used for us to infer things like income of the people that visit your particular store, that infer age of the visitors to your particular store. So let's say I want to launch a new product to a high-income audience that is maybe in the middle-age segment, right? A new clothing line, for example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cluster my stores based on these criteria, because I don't go store by store. That would put too much of a strain on my supply chain. Rather, I want to cluster stores on these criteria. So I have income here, I have age here, and maybe I also want to use climate data in this clustering as well, because I don't want to stock it in areas where it's particularly hot. So now for all of these 1,600 locations, I get a profile of clusters. And I can very easily see where are the clusters there that are over-indexed in the categories that I care about. So as an example, I said I want to target high-income individuals in stores and middle-aged individuals. So if I look at cluster number 2, that seems to be the right cluster. I over-index in terms of visitors in the high-income bracket. I also over-index a lot on the middle-aged segments. And now I have 127 stores that belong to the segment. I can also see on the map whether or not this resonates. So here are all the locations of this particular grocer or big box retailer, sorted into these different clusters. And if we zoom in and do a quick intuition check, we can see that the urban locations, for example, are clustered together, which makes sense. They attract a particular audience. And then the suburban locations, which are the orange dots here, are also clustered together. So that way I can now, instead of relying on historical sales data, pull in this external data and make a much better decision on where to stock my product and launch a new product. And this is now just something where we are using the external data alone. Imagine when we can bring this together with sales data that resides in customer systems. So we can do an analysis of, okay, what demographic attributes contribute to sales? What demographic attributes or geospatial attributes drive sales? And that's something where the data hub is really, really powerful, because we don't have to worry about building the connections into these pieces. We don't have to worry about enriching the data that comes from the, enriching and transforming the data that comes from those record systems.
Yep.
So that's what we're doing with Atlas.
Thank you. Cool. Right? Wow.
All right, I'm making my stress ball.
So we are back. Okay. Take a little bit of time. There we go. So what we have seen is the middle piece, content, delivering content that is specifically relevant for our customers in a segment for a specific business context. Very powerful for SAP. I ask you, what is the differentiator? Why SAP? You know why SAP? Because it's large, it's integration, it's back to the process, to the core process. Because I've seen so many of these pitches around very isolated. So what we bring to the table is this end-to-end closeness. And the next demo I do have, because we are at SuccessFactors, what we have done, imagine now at SAP, we have, of course, a huge data pool around all our cloud businesses. So leveraging the transactional power and transactional data, we've done that, bringing together SuccessFactors and features data for doing recruiting in a much different way. Why I'm saying in a much different way, because when I was building up my team, my data network team, I wanted to hire data scientists. I can tell you, in the Silicon Valley, It's not easy. Right. So the first question I had is like from a competition point of view. So what is going on Google's and all others, and even like the Teslas of the world, everyone is looking for data scientists. So the key question was, if I at SAP was going to hire a data scientist, what is the likelihood that I'm successful? What's the time to fill? What is the average salary that I need to expect? And do I have alternatives? And the alternative, when it kicks in, it's very interesting, because a data scientist comes with a set of skills. I wanted to understand out there in the market, on the global market, what is a data scientist skill set? And then looking into what alternatives do I have when I look, for instance, for a business analyst, is the neighborhood of the skill part very, very much similar to a data scientist, but I have a bigger chance to get the person on board. And this is what lies in the data. This is what we've done using the Data Hub. And I just go and start with that picture, because I know that we at SAP, we love complexity.
Yes.
Right? You're very familiar, right?
It's not complex, it's complete.
It's complete, right? And our business is sometimes complex. Right? So that is basically what we've done. Imagine we took data from SAP SuccessFactors, data from Fieldglass, 2 million data records from each. RESTful API goes into the Data Hub, and I will call the Data Hub afterwards. Then we, of course, there needs to be a cleansing. We do certain things with the data, of course, before we can use it. Quality of data. So there are certain processing steps. We need to have machine learning, because I told you I'm interested. The business question I wanted to solve is, what kind of alternatives do I have when I look for a specific job role? So we look into machine learning foundations in order to understand what is the relationship between job and skills. What cluster of skills do I need to create in order to be able and capable to deliver on that specific business questions? So that's the overall data architectural side. And I now go into Data Hub if you still have some time.
I just have one question. You mentioned just data quality, because I was when I was seeing the demo, I was wondering where the data is coming from and how we sell this to our customers, that this is high quality data. So what the data sources are mainly.
Okay. So first of all, that is a very, operational paradigm that we are based on, because we are SAP. When we use certain external data sources and we make it part of our delivery of our data-driven innovation product, we need to make sure that the quality is there. Therefore, 80% of the time goes into specifically looking what are the core partners that I need from a data perspective, and how are you going to make sure that the quality is there, and understanding that. So my personal data network team has two very focused, I would say, capabilities. The one is about data scientists, but a real data scientist, not someone who calls themselves data scientists, but a really high-performing data scientist team. And then on the second perspective, on the data engineering side. This is the core capabilities that I've been building up into my business unit in order to deliver. Yeah. So what we have done is, you see in Python, 600 lines of code in order to understand job and skills categories. And then we created the Data Hub ingestion pipeline. Are you familiar with Data Hub? Anyone already worked with Data Hub? Cool. So what is your, maybe you come up and talk about Data Hub.
Basically, it's the higher data heterogeneous source, like Hadoop, for example, and a lot of computers, science, even Twitter, Facebook. So the data hub enables to acquire this heterogeneous data.
Yeah. You know what Data Hub is for me? Well, it's called Data Hub today, but basically it's a integration platform for data. I look at the Data Hub as an ERP for data. So the technology to bring and make sure that you can connect to all the openness around you, because what we see, data is distributed across multiple systems. It's never ever in one place. I've never done a project on a customer side where there was just one data source with one system had it all. So you need to bring it together. You need to solve the topic integration. You need to solve the topic in terms of you have different formats, how you're going to normalize. And the way the data hub is configured is it works with operators, and you can integrate into a powerful data pipeline all sorts of operators. And you define what those operators are. And Data Hub comes with a pre-configured operators, set of operators already, of course, connectors sometimes other operators, also connectivity to our S4, to C4, to our cloud businesses. And this makes our life so much easier, because it's never about one single small set of data, but it's always about a pipeline that you consider and you need to pre-configure. All right, so maybe you want to add something?
No, I think that's, I'm tremendously excited about it because it gives us both an opportunity to offer data that can be consumed in other contexts. So if you think about your battery, so it's an opportunity for us to bring data into the network where it can be then orchestrated alongside other data, and we can bring operators into it. But it's also a mechanism for us when we are building out applications that rely on sales data, for example, that come from a different source, to more easily acquire that data. And the overarching story why I think the data hub is really, really powerful is for a long time, SAP has treated integration as we need to get this entire process into one big solution. And I think over the last years, we have realized what a lot of other companies have realized too, integration is about assembling well-defined interfaces. And some companies have done a better job of that than others. But at the end of the day, we're now in a world where we have, I call it the multiverse, right? You have multiple vendors, you have multiple clouds, you have multiple applications. Each have their own individual interfaces, some better, some worse defined. But you want to make sure that you can tap into the data from each of them. And that's really where the data hub shines, is pulling that data, delivering you connections to those systems out of the box, and then letting you transform the data so you can actually do operative or productive work on it. So from a both data vendor and data consumption side perspective as Atlas, we're really excited about the data hub and making our lives easier.
All right. Okay. Super. Excited now about data hub?
Absolutely.
Excited about Atlas?
Even more.
And data network. Guys, I only tell you we are at the beginning of something that is tremendously important for SAP because it deals with innovation, new business models, it deals with how you're going to leverage in the potential in your data. And the data is really, I think, the basis for everything. If you think about machine learning, how you're going to train these models, and how you're going to make sure you end-to-end deliver on new applications, and the new development paradigm, basically the data drives the application and not the other way around. So very core, I want to close that session today with the total workforce insight product that we launch to the market. You're gonna see the press release coming out, Ariana. It's like the first day, next Tuesday. So this brings together Fieldglass and SuccessFactors data. And I told you machine learning part when I said what are the alternatives. This is what I meant around. This is, you see the data scientist as an example, and these are all the different job titles and roles that I can also hire that has a proximity to the skill set that has a data scientist. And then you have simulation capabilities in order to say, what does it mean with core metrics, core KPIs, what's the average salary, time to fail, etc., and understanding what are the skills gaps that if I hire a business analyst instead of a data scientist, where do I need to educate and fill the gap? Because the skill is at a particular element not as evolved as for a data scientist. So that is the end product. Then when I go now on the data hub perspective, and let me see, I'll just go in and get some of our pipelines in. So this is basically, you see, that is one of the pipelines that is underneath running in terms of making sure that I have that relationship between the job title and the skills clusters. So this is basically 3 process steps. Step number 1, how you're going to take data as an input and then translate it into Python. This is basically the machine learning Python script that we have developed, and then that's the output. And the output you were just seeing in the data-driven application that I was just showing to you. I hope that Henning and myself were able to inspire you for Data Hub. You're the first one to understand what's coming on a press release next week, prior to TechEd. And I'm very proud that we at SAP have this amazing technology and the components that are required in order to deliver such innovative solutions for our customers. And it is not rocket science. Within 3 months, you're going to deliver this to your customers. Of course, focus is everything, but this is what we have done with a lot of customers already in a lot of industries, and we're going to deliver now Q1 2019 based on the Data Hub edition in the cloud, which will also be announced. In Q1 2019, we deliver at the same time a industry-specific content, pre-configured content on the Data Hub relevant for retail. And that's
cool.
Still okay?
Good, good.
Not stressed out
No,
because
not
I can, I have a stress ball.
I have a stress ball as well, so good.
All right.
Perfect.
Any questions, comments, excitement, or?
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, you all love a passion for data.
Maybe I'll ask him. Thank you. Yeah, maybe a question about the different viewpoints on the data itself. So you could basically say, especially in SuccessFactors or in Fieldglass, you have the customer view of the data, then you have the contractor who's fitting into a taxonomy, and you have the abstract taxonomy. So you basically stayed on the safe side. You took the abstract taxonomy and you moved it into the Data Hub and said, look, we're going to make that a lot smarter. If I'm the contractor, I get a lot of value out of that. But on the customer side, I could argue, well, that's where, let's say I want to benchmark myself against something here. That's where obviously data gets transported back and forth. How do you protect the customer's data? How do you give assurances around protection and privacy? And customers see the draw of the benchmark, but at the same time, they want to have an underlying protection there.
So the legal work is, of course, a prerequisite in order for us to engage. So we have worked a lot on the legal side of the house in order to make sure that, first of all, we are allowed to use the data in an anonymized way and aggregated way in order to come up with the benchmarks. And making sure from a technology point of view, in no way you can figure out the individual customer or line item, so PII relevant. Because that as SAP is the biggest risk profile that we have when we deal and work with data that flows through our systems. That has been at least 8 months of our work in 2016, working together with the legal part of SAP in order to understand this is what we are allowed to do and this is how we're going to push the boundary. We have an opt-out, of course, possibility so that you can, as a customer, select that your records are not going to be part of the data pipeline ingestion. So we control very much the data pipeline ingestion as well. So on that side, a lot, 24 hours in focus and investment going into it. Yeah. But it's an amazing journey. I only can invite you to get yourself familiar in that space, because that space I talked about shaping the future. The future is all about algorithms. It's all about algorithm-driven options that you provide also in the business context. And data is always the foundation. It's always the core. And we at SAP did an amazing move recently, where we said the machine learning and the data science community is now working on one single platform, and that single platform is going to be built on top of Data Hub. This will also be something that you're going to hear at TechEd. Why are we doing that? Because reusability is key in that data context, that we're not reinventing the wheel, and Data Hub taps into the existing. So the operators is like the access, the integration to our systems, to different machine learning models. They are part of such operators that you can reuse. And what we are working, my team currently, is making sure that pre-configured content for the retail customers, the retail specific ones, that we develop those and deliver those to the customers. So the pipelines, as you see here, they are already by nature coming and delivered for you as a retailer, and that you can just go and accelerate your data-driven innovations based on these template data pipelines and the data assets available. Like, I hope very soon we're gonna see the Atlas operator within Data Hub. So the customer can then immediately tap into Atlas potential and make that part of the data pipeline and consume it the way they want to consume it. Mm-hmm. So an amazing journey. We are at a very, very important journey in our business life with TechEd and the announcement around TechEd. It's all about really tapping the potential. Yeah. So thank you so much. Thank you. I hope you have a wonderful TechEd next week. Okay.
Thank you so much. That was great. All right, next up we have Victoria, who will talk to us about the SDK for iOS.
This data, it's like close to look at what we're doing. Imagine how you're getting this data. Imagine where are they getting this data from? You apply for a credit card. You put there what is your age, what is your salary range. All these data, they have data vendors. Credit reports, pay by record bill. Telling all this data.
I'll see you around.
Okay, so everybody ready to get started?
Why you gone?
Okay, so who's heard of the SDK for iOS? Oh yeah, excellent. Simon, good. Okay, who's actually used the SDK for iOS? Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. That's fantastic, because my aim is to show you what it has to offer and encourage you to check it out, try it out. So this is the plan. First, we'll just talk about native apps and why you might want to build native apps as opposed to just building web apps. Then we'll talk a bit about what the SDK actually is and what it isn't. Next, we'll do a quick demo to show you what it looks like when you use it. And finally, I'll give you some tips that will help you help speed up you checking it out, trying it out, and building your first apps. Okay, so can anyone think of the reason why we want to build a native iOS app? What can we only do with a native app? Can only go in the App Store if you're doing that. Yeah, although, okay, good, yeah. Anything else?
Using the hardware database?
Yeah. Okay, good. So I've got some examples here. So two things basically. One is native features, things like offline. So you can build hybrid apps that use offline as well. Push notifications and things like the AR kit, which is augmented reality. And then another way to think about it is that if you have a native app, your app is in a native design as well as in a technical sense. It's actually, if you build a native iOS app, then it can look exactly like other iOS apps. So if you have a hybrid app, then you're essentially wrapping a web app. It's not really the same as a native app. So that's a couple of reasons. Obviously, also there are some disadvantages. The more expensive to develop and more expensive to maintain. Certainly to maintain because you've got to worry about things like operating system upgrades and things like that. If you're building, say, a Fiori web app, then you're running in the Fiori Launchpad and you're also relying on the browser as well. So those teams are having to worry about things like operating system upgrades and all of that kind of lower level stuff. So if you develop your own native app, you have got to think about all those things and you've got to be ready for those operating system upgrades. And obviously, if you develop a native iOS app, it's only going to work on iOS devices. So if you have a lot of Android devices in the fleet, for example, then that's something you need to think about very carefully. Okay, so if we decided that we definitely do want to build a native iOS app, then we're going to look at the SDK. So this is how I expected it to work. Basically, we add in some low data services that we've already developed, and maybe some configuration on cloud platform as well. And we turn the handle, and we get some beautiful native iOS apps. Does that seem sensible to everybody? Does that seem likely? Wrong. It's actually better, I think, to think about it like this. You're still using Xcode to build the apps. The SDK is kind of like an accelerator that's making that process much easier for you. At the end of the day, you're still building the apps. You're still using Xcode. So this is more how I like to think about it. So what makes up the SDK? Essentially, I think you can break it down into three pieces. The first is the assistant. So this is a standalone Mac OS app that you can use to generate the apps. So obviously, you need to have a Mac to use it. So once the apps are generated, you can then use Xcode or another tool to complete the app, put in all of your functionality, all of your UI. But it will actually generate the SDK for iOS, the SAP Cloud Platform SDK for iOS, will actually generate an app which will actually run instantly. And I'll show you that. And what it generates is a data browser app. So it shows you your OData service. It looks like this. So you can see in the left-hand pane, it's showing you all my entity types in the OData service. Then I can drill down and see all the visual entities, and then I can drill down to one entity, in this case, one purchase order, and I can see the actual data. And I can also do edits, so you can see I've got an edit button up there. So you get this without writing a single line of code. It's what the SDK does for you. So next we have the frameworks. So the framework is kind of like a reuse component. And SAP have developed these frameworks that makes up the core of the SDK essentially. So the foundation framework is very important. That has all of the integration functionality in it.
to connect to Cloud Platform to do authentication. And this is a good point to highlight. It's called the SAP Cloud Platform SDK for iOS because it only works with Cloud Platform. So at the moment, for mobile services, the on-premise mobile platform SAP is still around, and the functionality is more or less equivalent. But it doesn't work. The on-premise product doesn't work with the SDK for iOS. It doesn't work with the SDK for Android either. They're built just to work with Cloud Platform. So we've also got OData online and offline, which is obviously very important. The common framework is just reuse things like logging and so on. Does anybody know? I've got a feeling somebody will know what Fiori flows is. Do you know what that is? That's basically for onboarding. So there's a template for onboarding that you get out of the box, basically, where you can the user enters their credentials, and then they might get a license agreement or a data protection agreement or something to set it. That's what Fiori flows is. So the next part, the final part is Fiori for iOS, which is basically two things. One is it's a set of controls, UI elements that SAP have decided they can add some value by developing new UI controls. So one of them is the timeline, for example. This is a timeline cell that they use in it's used in the Work Manager app. And the other part is really the design language SDK, the Fiori for iOS, which is kind of a melding of the original Fiori guidelines for web and the human interface guidelines, which is Apple's UI framework, essentially. And to help using the controls and look at the SAP controls, you use the Mentor app, which looks like this. So you can see in the left-hand pane, you can see what the cell looks like, basically, with an overview. And then in the center pane, you can see you can actually change the attributes of that control. So you can say, what does it look like if I don't have a subheader text? So what you can do is you can just change the values here, and you can see straight away what it looks like, how you want to use it. And you can even copy the underlying code. If you tether your iPad to your Mac, you can actually copy this code straight into Xcode and make changes to it, which is quite useful because you do need to write a fair bit of code when you're building the app. So now what I'll do is I'll do a demo and show you what it looks like generating an app using the system. All right, is that big enough to see? Can everybody see that? Okay, that's a bit better. So what I'm going to do, first of all, I'll just show you, I'm already in the settings here. You can see my Cloud Platform accounts. So one for a customer and then my own trial account. So everything I'm going to show you, you can do using your own trial account for free. You don't have any special access. But you can see I've already added in the URL for my account and the credentials and so on. So the system can use that. So if I want to create a new app, I click on the plus button. It's a good start. And we'll call it SB. There's a few basic things on there to fill in. The next step, we're going to
talk about the configuration. So within mobile services, you have what they call an app. I think it's a bit confusing. It's basically a set of app settings that govern things like how we have the connectivity to the backend, what's the authentication and so on. So first of all, up here, we identify which account we're building the app for. And then in the bottom section, we specify these app settings. So you can either get the assistant to generate those settings for you from nothing, or you can go into Cloud Platform and create the settings and then build an app for that. So I'm just going to, just to save time, I'm going to use existing settings. So it's going to link into my Cloud Platform account. These are the apps that I've got. And I'm just going to use this one here, GS, for getting started. So when the assistant builds the app, it's going to connect to Cloud Platform and basically pick up all those settings and use them in the app build. So the next step, we choose the OData service. So this particular app setting just uses the sample service, which is in everybody's Cloud Platform account. So if you use your trial account, you'll have this as well. So you can do exactly the same. So this is some sample data. And then in the final step, we just specify what we want the assistant to do. So I wanted to generate an application. So the master detail application, like I showed you before, that browses the OData service, will enable the logging, but will probably take off the notifications, discovery service. And then you'll see at the bottom, this is a new feature in the latest release of the SDK. It can actually build an offline app for you as well. Although it's quite basic, it just switches to use the offline modules. It doesn't have stuff like notifications from the user when you switch your connectivity from online to offline or anything like that. It's just a very, very basic lift and shift. I think they're going to put a bit more into the next version. So we'll just stick with online for now. So if I click finish, it's going to generate the app for me. See what we get. Okay, there we go. So we have our iOS native app. And what I'll do is I'll launch the assistant so that we can take a look at how it runs. So you can see that I've got all these different virtual devices that I can use. So we'll just stick with the iPhone 8 Plus, that's fine. And all I need to do now is hit the play button and it launched the simulator. You can look at the app. So while it's doing that, I'll just show you some of the files. So the app delegate here, that's a very important file. That's a bit like if you're developing a Fury app, and you've got component.js that the launchpad picks up and uses to launch the app. The app delegate is similar to what the operating system is actually launching, or it's like a run function in Java or something like that. You can also see that we've got proxy classes for our OData service. So these are the entity types in that sample service, like purchase order item, you can see the sales order item, and so on. So it's generated these by querying the OData metadata. And then we also have the view controllers up here. So a lot of logic goes in these view controllers. And if we look at the storyboard, you'll actually see how the views fit together. So these are our views, and you can see the segue between the views, the arrows that link them together. So all of this has just been generated by the SDK. So I think the assistant is the simulator rather spied up. So what I'll do now, this is just like a real user the first time they've just installed the app, what they do. So this is the Fury flows that I talked about. This is the onboarding process.
So it's connected to cloud platform. Oh. Just so you know, this really is live and not video or something. I'll just try with my S number. So step to the real life demo. There we go. So now these are the other steps of your flows. And you can actually take these out if you don't need to have a data privacy section. But it's all in there just to start you off. They seem to put more and more steps in. All right, so now we can see we have, just like I showed you in the slide, we can go into the purchase order headers. And we can go into an individual purchase order and look at all the data. So just to finish off, okay, so just a couple of quick tips that might save you a bit of time if you give the SDK a go. One is just check the versioning before you start. So you need to download Xcode if you haven't already. You need to download the SDK. But you need to check the version compatibility because the SAP SDK doesn't always support the latest version of Xcode. So what I did was download the latest version of Xcode from the App Store, and then I found that the SDK wasn't actually compatible with that version. There's sometimes a small lag in between. So now I think Xcode 10 is out, so you can't download that until the SDK supports it. There's a great tool called Swift Playground, it's an iPad app, which you can use to learn Swift and get kids to learn Swift or whatever else you want to do. And within the simulator, it has a special feature just to trip up
people who are learning iOS development that makes everything run really slow. I discovered this about 5 minutes before I was doing a demo, and everything just runs really, really slow. That's actually a feature in Internet Office called slow animations, so just watch out for that. Then now, as I said, they upgrade the SDK periodically. The SAP releases a new version, and what you can do is, if you have apps that were developed on an older version of the SDK, you can actually upgrade them so that they can use the newer version of the SAP frameworks. And so use this refresh frameworks feature to do that.
Do we get options to pick different versions or like always to?
It just does it to that version. So when you upgrade the SDK, you'll have updated your assistant, and it will then just use the current frameworks for that version. But it will bring your app up to the current spec. And this is important. This is just a general tip. So I'm not an iOS developer, and I've just been getting into it in the last few months. So I would say, if you have something like a proof of concept that you want to work on, then you should get started and have a go with the SDK. As you can see, it's very easy to use. But if you're going to do something more complex, you're going to take an app to production, you probably want to make sure that you bring someone who does have iOS experience. Someone like this young lady who's been working on iOS apps. But if you just want to have a go, it's that easy, you can pick it up and get going. And I talked a bit more about that. I wrote a blog recently, so I expand on that a bit. Okay, any questions?
I have a question. If I want to use a camera, can it automatically happen with this code, or do we have to write a separate logic?
Camera?
So the question was, if we want to use a camera in the app. So
Yeah, let's say if I want to scan something with a barcode, for example, can it generate the code automatically for that, or do I need to write it separately?
No, there's not a feature in the assistant to do that for you. So you'd have to code that part yourself. So the assistant just generates a data browser app that I demoed. So you go into Xcode and add that yourself.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. If you have any other questions, these are my get in contact with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Big hand. Then, someone will talk to us about HANA deployments. Yeah.
Someone. Who break?
No break.
I can't run away?
You can run away, but we'll see you. All right, give her a big hand.
Thank you. Well, hi, my name is Lucia Berry. You might remember me from HANA-related topics, specifically HANA Express, or SAP HANA Express Edition. And today I will be talking about our HANA as a service version, our deployment in the cloud. I work at SAP in place you haven't noticed. I'm in the global developer relations team. I'm not product management, so do not ask me questions about what is coming because I really cannot answer them. Please take a minute to read our disclaimer. Oh, the cats and Nutella. Well, because generally when people introduce themselves, they talk about what they like. And I like Hana, I like cats, and I like Nutella. And I'm very proficient in the last two, like cats and Nutella. If you want to ask me about how to take care of a cat or how to eat a full jar of Nutella per week, I can definitely help you with that. Hana, maybe not so much. So the disclaimer, again, anything I say here may not be true, and I cannot promise anything or anything I say. Are you ready to that? I'll give you a copy. Does anybody here hasn't worked with Hana yet? Come on.
Hello?
Design brings Hana and make it better, that's why I'm laughing. Okay, so that's great, that's great. Just a quick reminder that Hana is not just an in-memory database that allows for columnar store and analytics and transactional operations out of the same structure, but we also have a lot of cool features that we have already mentioned today with some of our spatial graph, predictive machine learning, and so forth. I will be talking about Hana, that's why I wanted to warm up a little bit with this reminder, and you have probably seen this plenty of times, so I will not go in depth. But Hana needs a place to live, Hana needs a place to run, and at SAP we took care of having all the possibilities available for Hana to run. Starting by a personal computer, like my own, my very small pequeñita, which is really small and easy to carry. And I can run Hana Express in here.
Pequeñita, so that's
The small one, yeah. Literally.
So you're speaking Spanish, you need to say that.
That's right, yeah, because I'm originally from Argentina, that's the accent you're hearing. So Hana Express is our version of Hana that can run on any hardware. For example, our laptop, you can also deploy it on our partners. And by the way, it's for free, even for productive use, up to 32 gigs of RAM if you're looking to play or use it as a data mart. Then we also have the option to run Hana on-prem. If you like to have your servers with you somewhere in your company because you're emotionally attached to them and you want to go and hug them every once in a while because they behave so well and they have like high performance and you like maintaining them, specifically maintaining them and performing upgrades, we have the option to run Hana on-prem, of course. And then we have the option to run Hana in the cloud. We have the option to run Hana in the cloud in a way that you not take care of infrastructure, but you still take care of the upgrades and you still take care of the Hana system and you have access to the operating system. And then you also have the option of running Hana in a way in which you are completely careless and you let us take care of what happens and the upgrades and everything like that. And that's what I will be describing today, is this careless model in which you only focus on using Hana and not taking care of the upgrades and the infrastructure and the network and the security and the backups and so forth. Before I move into that, because there will be some concept that I will be touching during the demo. I'm not a friend of PowerPoint presentations, but of course it wouldn't be an SAP presentation if I wouldn't draw boxes inside of boxes. So this is what I'm doing now. This is something that we used to have. We still have it, of course, and it's HANA with a multi-tenant database container, and we have two tenant databases and the system DB. A quick reminder: system DB is for administration tasks, and the tenant is the one who will do the heavy lifting with the SQL. And we have this box there that we call Access Classic. Access Classic was initially a way of creating applications like HTML5 applications, or even exposing our models through data and having that embedded within the database and interacting natively with the database. As we progressed through the years, we found that the need to run applications on top of HANA, native applications, needed to grow. So what we did was spin off that XS Classic engine that we had there and acquire or embrace Cloud Foundry. Cloud Foundry was already there, so we did not reinvent the wheel. We took an open platform and we made it HANA friendly. And if you remember, because Cloud Foundry sounds like it runs in the cloud, if you remember I said that HANA can also run on-prem. So we grabbed Cloud Foundry and we made it on-prem ready. And that is XS Advanced. It's our on-premise version of Cloud Foundry. So this way, what this means to us, or to anyone developing applications, is that you do not need to worry about the underlying platform, because you're always developing against Cloud Foundry. And with Cloud Foundry comes a new concept, that is the concept of the HDI container. There's a lot of concepts coming in with Cloud Foundry. I will be happy to talk about them later, but it's not the focus of this presentation. But one of the concepts that come in and is relevant to this presentation is the HDI containers. HDI containers is a very cool way of representing schemas. Like a schema is logical separation of data, basically. And in this case, the HDI container is a schema with superpowers. Why superpowers? Because it will deploy all the physical objects for you. You do not need to worry about talking to the actual physical objects of the schemas. You will have this service that will be deploying or translating all of the design time artifacts, like the ones that Rui mentioned before, like CES. And they will be deployed and they will be translated into actual physical objects. But HDI will do that for you. And also because you will not be accessing this schema directly, you will be accessing it through a couple of technical users that are the only owners of the schema and the objects within it. And you also access this schema through a service like an API. So it's a bit of a complex, but not so complex concept once you get used to it. And this is how today we reach HANA as a service. So we have SAP Cloud Platform, and SAP Cloud Platform will take care of deploying the tenant database that you can access and you can play with and create HDI containers within it, without worrying about whatever is underlying your actual database. The only thing that you need to pick and choose is actually which region and which provider will be hosting your database. But that's the only thing that you will be picking, and the RAM. So I will try to put this into something more practical and show you how the deployment is done. If I can figure out how to present. Still learning. Yeah. Not much. So as I was saying, you have the option to deploy anywhere, and the way you choose where you will be deploying are the different SAP accounts. I have one in Germany, the other is here in the US. And of course, I have a Neo stack because I will be using the SAP Web ID full stack. But right now, I will go into one of my SAP accounts, the one that I have closer. And if the demo gods accompany me, we should be able to see my space. I only have a development space. I could have had any other thing. I'm going to service. I'm going to go into the service marketplace. And one of the things you will notice here is at least two tiles that are HANA related. The first style here is the SAP HANA service. If we go mentally back to the presentation that I was doing before in the boxes, this is actually the tenant that will be created for you. And the thing that we have right next to it on the left is an HDI container. An HDI container will need a tenant to run on, right? Remember that these were schemas within a database. So I will start by creating an actual HANA service. And one of the things that I have here is the plan. In this account in particular, I'm missing a plan, but you would have the option to choose between two plans. One is the standard plan, and the standard plan is the core database services plus series data. And then we have the enterprise plan, that is the one that I will be using, that has all the cool features that I reminded you before, like the document store, or the predictive, or the graph, and geospatial. We've been talking about geospatial. So all the cool HANA features that we have there. And I will be creating an instance. You have a very easy way to create an instance, that is the graphical instance. I already had one because I know how the demo dots are sometimes. But I'll show you how you can create one. I could choose between two plans, but as I said before, my account doesn't have it. System password, quick reminder, the system password is the one that you will be using for administration. I have a very secret password that I do not share with anybody. Kind of.
Yes.
And tell. And now, this is like the hardest decision you will have to make while creating, is how many blocks will your HANA database require. The minimum is 2, the maximum today is 2 terabytes, depending on the region as well. And for productive, the minimum recommended is 4, that is 64 gigs. I will stick to the minimum of 2. Then you have the connections. You will see this later when I show the cockpit, but all of the connections, and this is worth mentioning, are SSH enforced. You cannot, it will be rejected, the connection will be rejected if it's not encrypted. You could choose to do all of this, denying or allowing or whitelisting IP addresses. We do not really care here because I will not be connected from outside. And then we have the capabilities. I would want to use all the cool stuff in HANA, so I would need a script server. A quick reminder that the script server is the parallel or extended server that HANA uses to execute heavy-duty procedures and still keeping the stability of the database. So if you want to do stuff like predictive or machine learning, you will need a script server. Data provisioning server if you want to use SDI, which you probably want to use SDI, or you could load data like with a through ID using a CSV. And then the document store. This is somehow an overlooked feature that HANA has, but this is NoSQL basically. It's a store that uses JSON. It doesn't use actual tables, it uses JSON key-value pairs. We go next. Well, there's nothing to bind to the database per se right now, and the instance name is actually the service instance name. So I would do something like my service, and this would be the name of the actual instance. Now, this is one way of creating. If I click finish, it will start creating, but I want to show you another way of creating this that leverages all these parameters in a JSON format. You could also use the CLI. I'm a friend of the CLI. The problem with the CLI is that I'm not sure this is visible.
Looks good.
Looks good?
Yeah.
So you can see that it is connected. No, you cannot really see that it is connected to anything, right? I'm connected to Cloud Foundry, and I did CF Marketplace because I want to list all the tiles that we were seeing before. And one of the tiles that we were seeing before was the HANA service. So if I wanted to provision myself with a HANA service, I would do CS. Yes, I want a service of type HANA B within the plan enterprise.
CS stands for create service, right?
Thank you. Yes, that's we're getting to explain that. But yes, CS stands for create service.
Enterprise is the plan.
Enterprise is the plan. My service would be the name of the service. And then I would do -C and the super JSON stuff that I have here. But because I'm using Windows, this thing is escaping. So I have a cheat sheet there. And I'm basically given the same parameters that I would have used to create the service. And unless I run out of quota, for example, for playing with this too hard, the creation is in progress. So if I go back to the UI, this picked it up. It's creating the actual service. But I already had a service here. So I'm going to go ahead and first show you the cockpit so that you can see what it looks like. These are my SAP credentials. And it's not visible at all. There, endpoints. This is something that I wanted to point out. So first, the ID, this GUID is the ID of the database. It's not the most friendly to call the database, but you will not be using this ID a lot. But it's something that you could use if you had multiple databases and you want to deploy an HDI container, specifically one of them. This will be a parameter to it. And then we have these two endpoints. One is the direct SQL connectivity that you would use with Force encrypted, but using any of the clients. And then we have WebSocket connectivity. That is new. And the reason behind WebSocket connectivity is for it to be firewall friendly, so you not have to fiddle around with the ports like you would have for those who have deployed HXC. We used to have some problems with the ports, right? And of course, I have the status here, looking that it's active, it's running. I could stop it. I'm not going to stop it because I'm going to use it. I have a copy that is initialized. Well, okay. This is the same good old cockpit that you would see in an on-prem database, for example. And it's giving me the status and monitoring of my database, and I also have control over anything that I need to have control of in my tenant database. And once again, if you're looking for the system database, it's not here, and you will not have access to it. Why? Because you do not need to worry about administration of this thing. So translating this to development, I do have an MTA here, but it's not built. If I connect to the database explorer, I should be able to see the database here. How do I know that it's the database? Well, the endpoint matches, and also I have this attack on the keyboard that is the GUI. And if I open this, I'll see the catalog, and this looks pretty much like what we used to have in HANA Studio, for example, and we're looking at our basically physical schemata. And to have a little bit of fun, I will not do a very fancy application like Ruby did. I will be doing something very simple. T. And here come the versions. Well, I'm going to name the schema here. And here come the versions. There's a peculiarity about the versions, because remember I told you that with this, you do not need to worry about the upgrades. We will be doing that for you. And we will be doing that for you monthly. And the way that and versions are not support package stacks, okay? I'm talking about revisions. So anything that gets included or a new functionality or it could be fixes as well, you will get it in the cloud first. So this is just a reminder of that. I'm going to choose SPSO 3. And by the way, support for the versions will be current version revision, sorry, -2. So that gives you around 3 months between the launch of a revision to do adjustments if you need to do any adjustments, which generally is not really needed. Finish. Bless you. I got a database module. Before I go into the database module, you will have to believe me here. What you can see there is 2 services, actually 3 services. The first is of type HANA-DB, and it's the service that I had created before. The second is of type my service. HANA-DB also, it's called my service, is the one that I just created using the CLI, is the one that I created before that. And then I have a UAA service that is an authentication service that I have bound to one of my applications somewhere else. By the way, it's still creating the other service, the HANA-DB. Usually takes around 12 minutes. And I wanted to show you that I only had 3. And the reason why I'm doing that is here, I'm going to create a very simple database table. This is a CDS, an HDB CDS. Rui mentioned them. He used the cloud application programming model. He got this generated automatically from a full CDS. I am creating it. And then we just add a single column. Save. And unless my builder got crazy, this should be building my HDI container. And notice that all I did was run the MTA, the multi-target application wizard, and I did nothing but dragging and dropping stuff in CDS. This will take a while in the building. But if I wanted to catch this in the CLI, we can also see that the service is getting created. And you can see this very creative name here. I don't know if you get to see it, you probably don't, because I wouldn't. But you have the name of the workspace, you have HDI and then the concatenation of the module, and I tap on the keyboard, well, my A number, and I tap on the keyboard because that's what happens when we give permission to the machines to be creative. And if that is my HDI container getting created. That's my schema in which I will be deploying actual tables like the one I just created here. So while that thing is created there, what I wanted to show you is that I actually have the HDI container created as well. And then all I did was create a new database, drag and drop a couple of things, and I also have a full-blown HANA enabled with a table in it. So what that is actually reporting. Great success. Good. This one agrees. If I come here, I'm going to try this. I see my HDI container. And there's my table. That's the table that I created with my single field. It will not have data because, of course, I haven't inserted any data in it, but you can see that it's pretty easy. And these are the other things that I was talking about, the cool HANA functionalities like the graph workspace and JSON, the document store. I can leave the demo now. And maybe, there we go. So the last thing would be, where do you use this? Like, why would somebody use this? I'll start by the last option, which is something that I actually use HANA and this kind of HANA a lot, which is my own data card. So I get, for example, when we go to conferences, we sometimes get input from customers and we get some of the data because of GDPR, we are not allowed to get all of their data. But I still want to cross some of the stuff that we have there with our main data lakes. So, and I do not want to go through the process of injecting that data into those data lakes. So what I do is connect my HANA services to those data lakes and upload the data that I got for that specific event and mix it and match it and run all the fancy HANA SQL that I can run. And then the main use case, what we're seeing is extensions. Of course, when you have your data in your ERP and you want to enrich it and you want to get further insights, you connect, of course, your HANA database, you can get the data out of it and you can run whatever query you want to run, especially if you want to mix it, as somebody was mentioning before, with unstructured data like the ones that you would get from social media. And then we have intelligent applications. Intelligent applications are, for example, something that involves an narrative. If you want to do IoT or you want to do blockchain, you will not have that on premise. So it doesn't make any sense to integrate the data with something that is not in the cloud. Integrating something in the cloud with something that is on premise is going to be quite painstaking, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. So this is another use case that is interesting for HANA as a service. I think I'm good in time. I finished my demo. So do you have questions?
I do. Hi.
I like your jacket. Where did you get that from?
I actually got it on your team.
I
had a question, because everything you showed is in the Cloud Foundry environment, but we did make HANA available as a service in the Neo environment, right? So I'm just trying to understand like kind of the core differences between, are we saying that this is now available as a service, or now it's available as a service with the scalable infrastructure of Cloud Foundry, or what are we saying?
All of that. We're saying all of that and a bit more.
That's why he's wearing a jacket.
Yeah, good. We're saying that Neo has been HANA 1, SPS 12, and it's remained in there. There's no further innovations coming into Neo. It's still useful.
We're never going to want to, or can we not say that?
I do not know because I'm not a product management. I don't know. All I can tell is that we're not getting further innovations into Neo. And but with that comes that HANA as a service, as I said, gets patched every month. So whatever new you have there will get patched there as well. Then one difference is also about how it gets built. Because HANA as a service, you can buy it as a subscription or meter by the hour. So for use cases like you want to just have a HANA for a little while, like the third scenario, you can do that. And it will not be built monthly like the Neo. So that's one of the other things. And yes, of course, it's in Cloud Foundry. It's a service in Cloud Foundry. Fully integrated, as you saw, not only with the Web IDE, but also with the CLI.
Actually, I was going to ask a question on that, because you also, when you first created your service, the service, you designated the amount of memory kind of right up front. I mean, but with Cloud Foundry, you can that's scalable, right? So I guess why do they have it as something you have to define kind of at the beginning before why can't you just define it in the moment?
Well, it's an initial provision. then you could downscale or upscale, definitely. But the initial provision needs to be parameters. Because you will run short. If I already know that I want a 2 terabyte instance, I want to deploy a full 2 terabyte instance, start loading data into it. But then if you want to downscale or upscale, you could. It's a good question. Very good question.
There are more questions, Lucia?
The website that you're using, this is like a version for HANA or?
That's also a very good question. Now, this is the WebID full stack.
Okay.
I wish I had a product manager here. Stay tuned with HANA Express. It's like it's, but yeah, it's the full stack. By the way, if you're going to TechEd, I'm giving you guys some accounts so that you deploy this yourself and use the cloud application programming model against HANA as a service. Not this simple MTA, but the CAP model that Rui was showing before.
Any last questions? Oh, give Lucia a big hand. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
In about 25 minutes, we'll have lunch. But before that, I'm really happy to introduce Chris from SAP, who will talk to us about blockchain and key use cases. Give a big applause.
Alright, who works at SAP? Yeah. Alright, so for the rest of you, SAP has 6 core values. My 2 favorites are stay curious and tell it like it is. And with those 2 in mind, a very natural first question emerges. In the world of decentralized applications, where does the world's largest single source of truth fit in? And today, and over the course of the last 2 years, and hopefully many more years to come, SAP has been looking into how to fit blockchain technology in with SAP's traditional core offerings like ERP. So I'm going to answer the question of where does SAP fit in 3 parts. The first is an understanding what blockchain is. The second is an understanding what SAP is and what power it brings to the table. And then the third is exploring how those 2 parts play together. So first, in a tweet, it's only 138 characters. Blockchain is a new protocol for distributed ledgers and multi-party business processes. In more than a tweet, when we think about what this really means, it means we've taken the original data structure, the ledger, the thing that has just been there to keep track of transactions with a from, to, amount, and type of good, and we've turned it on its head. Instead of being a system of record, as it has been for thousands of years, we turn it into a system of action for digital assets. And that brings us to the core of how we will analyze what blockchain is. With this overarching view, I personally spend most of my time looking at the technological details of blockchain, like learning that certain blockchains have built their own peer-to-peer protocols, which make them incompatible with certain web service providers, because those web service providers like to use DNS lookup, but the peer-to-peer protocols don't support DNS lookup. Or things like, it takes a lot of memory to start some of the containers that are required to bootstrap these networks. So you need specific types of, computing power, but only for startup. And then after startup, it becomes a very low memory process. And then there are the things my colleagues focus on, the business processes. Those people go to different events like design thinking workshops and work with our specific customers to find what business processes they're having problems with, and find ways that we can fit SAP solutions, whether they're blockchain solutions or otherwise, in to fix those processes. And then there are the new network-based business models, and the new simple data sharing-based business models. Because our discussions of blockchain technology have uncovered just as much in mistakes about what blockchain is to people as it has about the new network-based business models that blockchain requires. Because something that I think most people know is that blockchain is a decentralized computing platform, which means that the computing is not owned by one entity anymore. It's not like how Facebook owns all of the data inside Facebook and Facebook's data centers. Rather, it's a consortium of organizations that shares the responsibility for this process. And in blockchain use cases, traditionally, that data is wholly replicated across each stakeholder that owns computing power in the network. One of the big mistakes we saw that led to discussions about how to better use things like SAP Data Hub or better ways to do data sharing between organizations is that people did not immediately get that the data needs to be wholly replicated. Rather, they took blockchain to mean it's time for a discussion about how we can share data. And those discussions were equally fruitful for both SAP and the customers, but are not the focus of my talk today. Today, we focus on how SAP deals with the traditional blockchain use cases, if with such a nascent technology, you could say there is such a thing as a traditional blockchain use case. So with SAP's analysis of what blockchain is, let's look at our unique approach and capabilities to leverage the power of SAP. Because Silicon Valley is littered with sensational stories that Malcolm Gladwell may like to write about how Netflix killed Blockbuster, or how Amazon killed Barnes & Noble, or how David beat Goliath because they had better tools. But the reality is, with over 300,000 customers and 20 billion in revenue, SAP is in a very strong position to not only maintain its incumbency, but do great things going forward. And we're going to do that by playing to our strengths. The first is that SAP is a key part of business processes for organizations all over the world. As it does that, it is the centric and system of record for those business processes. So since we realize that blockchain technology is capable of turning the traditional system of record into a system of action, SAP is going to look inside of the intelligent enterprise and find the best ways to leverage blockchain technology to enhance the intelligent enterprise and turn the system of record into something that's no longer just maintaining a list of transactions, but rather executing those transactions as well. Then we look into business networks, experience, and pedigree. This is something that SAP is very far ahead of where any startup could ever dream of being. And one of the ways that SAP drives innovation that I will show you later. And then there's the cloud platform. Being that blockchain is involved in distributed systems, it's a natural place to go look and see how we can augment cloud platform with blockchain, which is another part of what we will talk about later. So business networks, experience, and pedigree. With over 300,000 customers, SAP has a gigantic business network. One of the requirements of being successful, if you look at things like the lean startup approach, which is a very popular thing to read about as an entrepreneur in the Valley, is validating things with customers. And since we're in the very fortunate state that blockchain is ridiculously possible, we had to tell customers no when we were trying to figure out how to best validate our solutions. So we settled on a few more than 80 of our key customers and partners to run these ideas by, to have design thinking sessions with, and to attempt to innovate. And one of the things we came up with from those sessions is that we should take a little more active role in building the consortiums that actually do the decentralized processing for blockchain networks. This was a slightly harder sell. So if you're interested in joining any of SAP's consortiums for blockchain networks and your organization happens to fall into one of those categories, or a different category other than high tech and telecom, life sciences and pharmaceuticals, or consumer products, retail and agribusiness, and you have the feeling that there should be a consortium doing the decentralized processing necessary to have blockchain run for that industry, you should definitely reach out to blockchain@sap.com. Because blockchain solutions are not like the traditional solutions. You can't go to Heroku, spin up like a Postgres instance or a MongoDB instance, and then connect your Node.js application to it and say, I have my blockchain application. Rather, for it to be real, for it to have the power to function in the world, it needs that network to connect to. So although I'm going to show you how we make it very easy to spin up these networks, the big business problem facing people is how to actually agree on the rules to the network and come together and make the network a feasible business reality. And we're helping facilitate some of that in 3 key industries, and are more than happy to help out in more industries. All you have to do is reach out and say you want to be a part of it. So as I said, part of the vision is putting blockchain in cloud platform, because the stark reality of blockchain technology is that it is very hard to do like the nitty-gritty bits of setting up these networks. For example, in order to deploy a Hyperledger Fabric network, you have to get a certificate authority, whether that's an LDAP certificate authority, the default Hyperledger Fabric certificate authority, or one of your own. This is like a month-long learning curve for someone that's never done that before. And then from there, you have to begin to understand the different requirements for a Hyperledger Fabric peer versus a Hyperledger Fabric orderer. And things like that should make your face kind of go, it's a hassle. It is not something people should have to trouble themselves with. Rather, it's something that SAP can help. We have running in production the SAP Cloud Platform blockchain service for the frameworks Hyperledger Fabric and Multichain to ease away some of that hassle, so that when people have come to the conclusion about the enterprise process they would like to overhaul and the business problem they would like to fix by overhauling this enterprise process, it's a click of a button for an application developer to spin up the blockchain node that can then speak to other blockchain nodes and be a part of that larger network. Which brings us to the SAP blockchain strategy. It's in 3 colors and 2 generic buckets. The first generic bucket is build cool applications that customer organizations and people inside those organizations can use. The second bucket is developer enablement, because normal developers shouldn't have to learn all of the details about how Ethereum has their peer-to-peer protocol. So let's analyze the developer bucket first. So we are very proud that we have the general availability of the SAP Cloud Platform blockchain service since, what is that conference? Sapphire, yeah, that is the one. Since Sapphire, the one the salespeople go to, for Hyperledger Fabric on SAP Cloud Platform, Multichain on SAP Cloud Platform, our blockchain and our blockchain application enablement services. So you may ask why we picked Hyperledger Fabric, Multichain, and what's coming next. So the decision to go with Hyperledger Fabric is that it comes from the Hyperledger organization, which at the time of the development was one of the key organizations for building enterprise blockchains. We looked into multi-chain and decided it was a good idea because it's a very lightweight enterprise distribution, which means it doesn't support smart contracts. Rather, its cool features are that it gets multi-signature accounts by default, which is 500 lines of Go chain code if you want that supported on Hyperledger Fabric, and that it has something called streams. A stream is a very cool feature because when normal humans think about blockchain, as normal a human that thinks about blockchain thinks about it, they typically think of something like Bitcoin that deals in the transaction of these cryptographic digital assets. And multi-chain is a fork of the Bitcoin blockchain, but they added enterprise capabilities, like having private networks and streams. The important part about streams is that they satisfy the use case of being a key value store, which is very important because 80% of the enterprise blockchain use cases we've identified fall under the generic umbrella of document-proof use cases, which means instead of really transferring an asset between two parties, rather we code sign stuff for the developers in the room. We take the cryptographic hash of some set of data and store that data on the blockchain so that we can guarantee the integrity of that data. And when we look at the use cases, the two big use cases, I will explain in more detail things that we've taken the cryptographic hash of. For those that are not familiar with hashing, it is a one-way function, which means that you can't go backwards from the hash. And it is attempting to be unique for each object hashed. So it creates a human incomprehensible fingerprint for the thing that is being hashed. Then we have our blockchain application enablement, because since we noticed that 80% of the solutions are document-proof solutions, you should be able to spin one of those up with the click of a button too, and easily integrate with your application. And then we have the SAP HANA blockchain service in beta. If you're curious about when the SAP HANA blockchain service will be leaving beta, and things like what frameworks we're looking at next, I highly recommend going to the blockchain-related sessions at TechEd by my colleagues Alexander Schaefer, Andreas Fichter, Torsten Zuba, and Sati. So let's take a quick high-level look at the SAP Cloud Platform Blockchain Application Enablement Services. We have timestamp, proof of state, and proof of history, which are sort of the three core things that revolve around a document-proof use case, right? Because when we have the hash, we can hash the time that the thing was created with it and have a verifiable proof of when the specific object was created. We can rehash at new times to get very verifiable proof of when things are transferred, in addition to the time that it ends up in the block, which gives another set of times for verifying the timestamp of an object. Then we have proof of state, which is, once again, the generic document proof use case, but augmented a little bit because you would be able to create your own arbitrarily large JSON object for the state you are trying to prove. And instead of dealing with things like figuring out whether you want SHA-256 or a different hash function and which crypto library to use, you simply use the proof of state application enablement service and send your data to that. And then, as with everything SAP does, HANA finds its way in eventually. We have the SAP HANA blockchain service for the seamless integration of database and blockchain transactions. It's a really pretty slide. It's also a very pretty service that's currently in beta. So if you're interested in using it, you should email blockchain@sap.com with your request to get access to it, and we will do our best to have you up and running in no time. And the architecture is alive on this one, right? There's a picture of the cloud. So the general idea behind the SAP Cloud Platform HANA's blockchain service is that it links the data flow from the blockchain platform to SAP HANA. So you can use things like the application enablement services to get data from HANA into the blockchain in a more simple fashion than writing the queries to SAP HANA, transforming the data, hashing that data, putting it in the blockchain, rinse and repeat. So the idea is that there's going to be less logic for developers to deal with so that they can be easily enabled within the SAP ecosystem. Now that we have a sense of the developer tools, we should look at some of the things that SAP has built with those tools. One of the cooler parts of my job is that for the first year and a half when we were sort of figuring out what to build, I got to be the technical guy in the room saying, yeah, that's doable, or please, please no, can we go back to the drawing board and do something else? This is a list of 10 of the things we decided were relatively doable and at least kind of useful. If the slides get, do the slides get distributed after this?
Possibly.
All right, so there's a list of one-pagers that I'm not going to go through for the sake of time and for the sake of everyone getting to lunch soon. But I am going to go through 2 of our favorite use cases. They're our favorite use cases because they've made it from this list of proofs of concept and have made it into the hands of real development teams that we are attempting to turn into actual products. You know, the things in the green bucket of applications that normal human beings working at our customer companies can get their hands on and use. The first is the SAP Information Collaboration Hub for Life Sciences, compliance with the 2019 US DSCSA Sellable Returns Verification. Or more simply, it's a use case for the pharmaceuticals industry so that they can have supply chain transparency to guarantee the integrity of drugs from manufacture at Genentech to when they end up on the shelves at CVS. Well, in the pharmacy shelves at CVS. Because there is a very large market in the United States of people that have drugs prescribed to them and never pick them up. And it would be nice for CVS, instead of having to hold on to that inventory until they're prescribed to another person, are able to send it back. And in order to do this safely, the government decided that there should be end-to-end transparency in that supply chain to avoid counterfeits. The German government does this very simply with a centralized database and a little bit of bureaucracy. In the US, they have left it up to the companies to figure out how to implement these solutions. And as a result, they've looked to blockchain solutions for it. I spent 6 months working on this project as blockchain guy. I wrote a little paper about it, and I also did analysis of over 50 million data points on how we will most effectively run these networks. And it was a ton of fun. The first way you might think of doing this is not the way we ended up doing it, right? Like, the first sort of train of thought when we're trying to track and trace the life of a drug would to be create a token that represents that pharmaceutical product. And as it transfers between hands, you simply say, that token has been transferred, right? Like, that's the immediate 2-second thought on how to do it. But that's not what we wanted to do, because we wanted to guarantee the integrity of the thing being transferred based on information on that thing, specifically its serial number, its batch date, and a few other very esoteric, very pharmaceutical industry bits of data, like its EPSIS number. And based on that information, we create a hash of a relatively large JSON object. The hash becomes smaller, which is good for the blockchain because that data needs to be replicated across every single stakeholder in its entirety. So creating a token with 57 data fields is not the smartest go-to move. Rather, creating a 64 kilobyte hash is much easier. So we take that hash, we put it in a multi-chain stream using the built-in capabilities of the multi-chain framework. Instead of writing our own sort of key value pair, writing our own lookup service to deal with a different blockchain framework such as Hyperledger Fabric, we use the multi-chain stream, and then every time that drug is passed, it gets scanned by, whether it's an automated scanning device or it's one of the people that actually pick up boxes, take them from trucks and put them into warehouses. That gets scanned. The hash is calculated inside the Information Collaboration Hub for Life Sciences and double checked with the blockchain to make sure that it is one of the drugs that is already on the blockchain, so that we avoid the sort of silly problems of drugs falling off and ending up back on trucks somewhere else. And then we have farm to consumer, the end-to-end blockchain-based traceability solution for the agri-food sector. You guys have probably read in places like Coinbase or the Wall Street Journal that Walmart is doing something with this whole blockchain thing, and they're forcing all of their suppliers to use this whole blockchain thing, and they're doing it with IBM. Well, we're doing it with Target, Tyson Chicken, and I think about 17 other customers as well. And one of the things we're doing there is we are once again hashing the goods, storing them on the blockchain, and then making sure everything is okay. Since I see they're kind of still setting up lunch, it's not like totally ready yet. Do you guys want to ask me questions until we can eat?
Do we have any questions? No questions?
All right. So do you know how long before you get out of the blockchain?
For HANA?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, you got to go to TechEd for that. That's not one of the things you get at the free show.
Next question is, the way you are setting it up. Obviously, the customers you already have, for them it makes perfect sense to use your blockchain modules. But then in the market, there are way too many right now, and IBM has been working on this, and they are kind of way too advanced on that. What's your plan and strategy to catch up?
Oh, so it's not really catch up for us, right? Like when we're talking about things like the pharmaceuticals industry use case, no one else is really touching that. And we have members that are a part of that consortium that aren't current SAP customers. We've actually advanced far beyond just someone spinning up a node in the SAP Cloud Platform blockchain as like a prototype. We have actual consortiums that you don't need to be an SAP customer to join. And then for the pharmaceuticals industry use case, we have people involved that aren't SAP customers.
We need to figure that out how.
So it's because when we go back to this slide, the way that the blockchain network works is that regardless of how the information gets into the blockchain, that data is shared across every node in the blockchain, where a node would be like a server or a virtual machine on a server somewhere, depending on specific implementation details. If people would like to use SAP Cloud Platform, we abstract away a lot of the hassle of deploying Docker images and making sure your AWS instance is on. If someone wants nothing to do with SAP except to be a part of a consortium, we can give them the information about the blockchain network, and they can plug it in.
For us, that could be a start, and then later on we'll realize the value of SAP network. So it could be a good start, at least for us. We are not on SAP platform, and definitely, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I have been around blockchain since it started, and I have been, I've seen a lot of those. So, and obviously we are not on SAP platform. So, if offline, if we can work,
of course,
on that.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Yes, Mark.
I think I should also maybe make this a little clearer because I might have done too good of a sales pitch. Like 10 minutes ago, I was in the terminal very upset with how I'm getting an out-of-memory error on Kubernetes for those Docker containers. So you can also ask those questions to the developer contract. Yeah.
How do you solve the scaling problem that most of the blockchains have? We have solved that.
You know, so there's a few different types of scaling problem that the blockchains run into. And we've found that if you want like 100 million transactions a second, just don't use any of the current blockchain frameworks. And it's a part of matching the tool to the job. Like chainsaws are fantastic at cutting stuff, but you should not use a chainsaw to cut a steak. Hopefully you get a good enough steak that you can use a butter knife. So we looked inside the SAP ecosystem and we asked ourselves which use cases didn't require the 10 million transactions per second, which were more on the order of 5,000 transactions a day. And that way we ended up with things like the pharmaceuticals industry use case. Because the stark reality is there aren't that many pharmaceutical products that get made when you compare that sort of scale to the number of transactions that happen on Visa's network. Or like, even though there may be a ton of chickens killed by Tyson every year, on a daily basis, if you're tracking at like the granularity of every 150 chickens, it's like really easy to get all of that data into the blockchain. As for the scalability problem of what to do when we overflow our databases, we've been focused, we have kind of like a two-pronged approach to this one. The first prong is that data is super cheap, and we are happy about this. The second prong is that we are careful about what we put in the databases that are actually doing blockchain stuff. That's why we love the document proof use cases so much, because it shrinks the entry size while still giving a reasonable notion of like what the item is. So by storing hashes and trading the hashable information offline, or at least off the blockchain using a different distributed system, we have another way of maintaining the invariant of as little data as possible inside the blockchain. But like going forward, protocols like Ethereum and Hyperledger and the Hyperledger organization have very intense working groups around things like maybe pruning the Merkle tree. Like if you look at the Ethereum network, you look at literally every transaction that's ever been attempted to be mined in the history of the network. But there are a lot of these things called uncle branches, which are sort of forgotten and useless. So one way to save data would be to trim the uncles, trim off the useless side chains. And then another way to save data that people think about doing is that at some point, you can kind of be like, yep, this is a transaction we agree with. Why do we have to store these first million transactions? No one really cares anymore. And that debate becomes a philosophical one about the trade-offs in having the visibility and transparency and knowing that entire history versus the expediency of not having to go back all the way, which has given birth to these things called light nodes, which instead of maintaining the entire history of the blockchain, rather they only maintain the main chain back to a certain point in history, so that they can do quick verifications of potential transactions, and also only get like the relevant history for the use case that they're doing instead of, you know, downloading the entire chain.
Can you talk a little bit about smart contracts, if you know?
Yeah, so smart contracts were a term coined by Nick Szabo. On my third day of work, we had this very boisterous business guy. He came into the room and he was just like, smart contracts are neither smart nor are they contracts. And over time, I've come to agree with him many fold. Because like when you look at the Ethereum ecosystem, what they call a smart contract is rather an account that you can automate behavior on using their Solidity code. And when you look at something like Hyperledger Fabric, what they call a smart contract is very much neither, right? It's Go code or Java code that has access to the Hyperledger Fabric SDK so that it has an interface to write whatever it wants to the ledger on the peer that it's connected to via the client. Right? So in Hyperledger Fabric, the Go chain code gets compiled and put in its own Docker image, sitting offside of a peer, and then it runs just like normal, boring programming language requests. Like there's nothing special about it, and it implements 2 SDKs. I haven't had to touch those SDKs in a year, so I'm sorry I forget their names. But those SDKs moderate the way that the chain code communicates with the ledger, much like how, like, when you include MongoDB in a JavaScript file through like require MongoDB, you get an interface to interact with your database. Like the chain code stuff is, and the rest of the smart contract stuff is just very much straightforward programming. Or if you look at something like the Ethereum ecosystem, it's along the lines of something that's an automated account more than a contract.
All right, so that was a great session, introduction to the blockchain. Please give Chris a big hand. Lunch has been set up back there. We'll have lunch for about 20 minutes and then we'll start back up. So please enjoy.
Ja, danke. Gut. Ja, was genau, ich habe mir gerade den Michael. Nee, das macht das war's, genau. Ja, ich glaube. Genau, ja, Claudia. Das ist halt bisschen mal ganz erholsam. Ich habe jetzt gerade mit der Herren gesprochen, der wird irgendwas formuliert und dann einfach überlegt, den auf den gemacht. Ziehen dann weiter durch. Okay. Ja, nicht so runter, das ist alles. Das ist mein Audio gemacht. Genau. Ja, aber ich habe jetzt sehr spannend auch so ein bisschen und dann aber ein bisschen machen die dann haben wir ein paar Leute, die ja, genau, so nett und machen auch genau und mehr aber einfach ein Portal, der Service und einfache Varianten braucht. Wo es für eine Eigenkapital hast, aber ja auch noch ja. Ja, das ist ein Weg. Genau. Das ist bei Das ist schön, weil der checkt das vor.
No, there are a lot of seminars. Ja, vel jeg tror fortsatt det samme, men det har jeg trodd nå hvert år da. Så jeg vet at jeg regner med det, altså.